Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law Splaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Ricada of Ricada Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And with me today is a very special guest who appears to be stuck in some sort of lag spike or something. I don't know. Can you hear me, LegalBytes? Uh-oh. We might be having internet issues. My mic is bad? Wrong mic is on? Oh my gosh. Everything is terrible.
There we are.
Let me fix my, oh God. Yeah, change my, there we go. Hopefully that's a better microphone. Oh goodness. So LegalBytes, you're like roboting out right now, which is.
Oh no. I was totally broken for a good,
It's still broken. The internet gods hate this stream already. What is going on? Is this my punishment for Twitch? You're moving at 1 frame per minute. This is great.
Oh no.
Okay, well, we'll kind of get started. Hopefully things will clear up. We were just talking and everything was fine. Let me try. This is going to be weird. I'm going to remove you and bring you back. I don't know if that fixes anything, but since it seemed to screw it up, maybe it'll fix it. Okay. Just a second. I'm going to try bringing her back. I don't know what happened. I was just talking to her and the video and audio were fine and smooth and everything was great. There. Oh,
are we fixed?
Yes. Yes. Hi. Welcome.
Okay. Hi.
I'm sitting here. I'm like, we were just talking. Everything was just fine. And yeah. Well, this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is LegalBytes. She is an attorney and she has a YouTube channel. It is linked in the description. Well, you got to click on the little @ LegalBytes and it'll take you to her channel. You should definitely go subscribe, especially if you like legal commentary. But today we're going to get to know her. And then she's going to help me talk about this Dr. Disrespect lawsuit through the lens of Phantoml0rd, who recently sued Twitch and won, which is weird.
Yeah. There's one last part of his case that's still they're waiting on a decision from the judge. Should be at the end of this week, if not at the end of this week, maybe by middle of the week next week. But otherwise on everything that's been finalized, aside from 1 or 2 claims, he won on. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Because pretty much nobody is winning against these tech platforms. Yeah. And it's great to see a content creator actually get some level of victory out of it. And it provides some hope for the future. And so we're going to talk about that. And then maybe we'll talk about that weirdo commie teacher out in Sacramento who is going through some. They just had the reason I'm thinking about this is right before getting on the stream, I checked my Twitter and Andy No was doing a report. They just had a school board meeting and they ended up canceling the school board meeting like in the middle of it. So everybody's pissed off. It's great. So we might end up talking about that later on as well. But first, we have to get to know our guest. So you are LegalBytes. Can you tell me about you?
So my real name is Alita. I am an attorney. I'm licensed in California and DC.
You doxed yourself immediately. What is this? This is the internet. You're supposed to just be LegalBytes. Now people know your real name.
It's my first name. It's fine. It's not my last name. No one knows. No one's going to be able to guess my last name.
Never.
No, I'm licensed in California and DC. I went to law school in Texas. So I'm not just bi-coastal. I have some experience outside of those bubbles. I've been mostly in litigation. A lot of my work has been in employment law and in wills and trusts, conservatorships, that kind of stuff. Pretty fun.
So you leave the promised land of Texas to get licensed in DC and California. Like what I don't know what would possess someone to do such a horrific crime. I don't know why you would do that.
Well, I'm originally from California, so for me it was going back home, Southern California, where there's actual sunshine. I don't know, Northern California is all right, but I definitely prefer Southern. But yeah, so for me it was going back home after law school. Although I did love Texas. I lived in Austin and I loved it. It was great. It's like it's a place where you'll find actually a lot of Californians, especially nowadays, since so many people are leaving the state. And
yeah,
for
they're
all
like
kinds of reasons.
they're like Californiaizing Texas from Austin as a central hub of the
Yeah.
of the infection.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, and I was maybe one of those, but oh well. But yeah, just helping to keep it weird, right?
Right. And Austin is weird. I methat's
Yeah.
a feature. That's a feature of
Yes.
Austin, not a bug.
Yeah.
It's a very strange place.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So and I started the channel after so for a long time when I started dating my now husband, he's in the military, and so I knew that if things were progressing the way that they were likely to progress, we were going to be living in probably a multitude of locations. And
yeah, all of them.
So yeah, basically all of them. And so bar licensing being what it is, and the California bar license, especially not having reciprocity anywhere else, I knew that I was probably going to need to be creative at some point if I wanted to keep some level of consistency with my job. And so then when the pandemic hit, I actually got laid off after being working from home for, however long. And when that happened, my husband was like, look, like you've been working from home, and I've overheard some of your explanations of these various legal topics to clients and whoever else. And he was like, I honestly think you could do that on YouTube. He's like, you could totally have a channel on YouTube where you talk about the law and you explain things to, regular people so that everybody can understand it. And I was like, that's amazing, because, people talk in law school about access to justice and, the fact that so many people don't have the ability to hire a lawyer or to even just understand legal concepts because they just can't access a lawyer because they're just too damn expensive. And I think that is true, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Like it's usually the attention is on people at the lower end of the socioeconomic stratum, but everywhere up through middle class, like you'll find that it's typically pretty hard. So anyway, I love that idea, and I decided to start the channel. So
yeah, it's way too expensive. There's my family law professor, talked about and all he did were high profile divorces that were going to trial. Like that was his entire practice area. He's like, I'm going to represent the CEO or someone going after a CEO. That was his, and he's like, I can't afford me. And he wasn't even very expensive, but it's just the way that costs stack up, the per hour price. Everybody's trying to pay back their student loans. And so, lawyers become unreasonably expensive very fast. And there's, I think that might've been something that caught people's attention early on when I was talking on my channel. Cause it's, someone has thought like maybe I could go on and explain the law online before. No, I'm just kidding. But I was talking about that. I was like, I was covering a case and I was telling everybody, nobody can afford this. You can't afford it. I can't afford it. No one can afford this. The lawyers who do it, they can't afford it. It's the people who can actually afford it tend to be at the levels of wealth that we all would aspire to be to. It's not there. The cutoff is very high.
Yeah.
But
no, I definitely agree.
But yeah, so okay, so you got laid off during the pandemic, like so many people did, and you start the channel. How long have you been doing? When did your channel actually start up? Because I've heard your name now for a couple months.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
So I started the channel in like April 2020. So pretty much like not long after, because I basically just sort of jumped into kind of lining things up and researching and everything. And then my first video was the end of June. And then it was monetized, I think by the end of July or August. And then since then, I've been uploading pretty consistently since then. And then I'm also doing other contract work and stuff like that because I also got really interested in legal tech. That's a really interesting new field too, and kind of along the same lines that we're talking about, right? Like access to justice, making legal services more, inexpensive and that kind of stuff. So I've been doing some contract work for a legal tech AI firm. I know AI technically isn't really the right way to to phrase it. I guess it's, technically there is no AI or something like that, but that's at least what Eric Hunley told me.
What does Eric Hunley know about intelligence, artificial or otherwise? Oh my
goodness. No, he's a good guy.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. but yeah. So anyway, but it's definitely been a very, very interesting time for sure. Since the pandemic, there's a lot of changes happening, and it'll be interesting to see where things go.
So what kind of, if you can, as much as you can and are comfortable saying, what kind of like legal AI are we talking about? Are we talking about like one of those systems where it's you get a speeding ticket and then you upload your ticket or whatever, and it prints out like a motion to dismiss and all of that stuff? Is it that?
No.
Or is it something different?
So the one that I'm doing contract work for is basically I'm essentially teaching AI robots how to do legal research. So this company,
you're trying to kill us all.
No. I'm taking the most boring parts of legal work, right, and giving it to machines. Like this is fine. Like this is the part that nobody wants to do.
Yeah, but do you know how many law school graduates need those research jobs?
That's true. I mean, that's fair. But we can also talk about how law school can also change to teach some practical skills to new lawyers, because I mean, yeah, of course you graduate and you know pretty much nothing about the actual practice of law.
Yeah, you're really good at flipping through case books, using case text or Bloomberg or Westlaw or Lexis, and then you get out there and you're it's like, oh well, but how do I like actually get a client? Like, what about that? Yeah. Or bill something, or or file all these things that you have to file as part of the process of legal work. Because that was great when I showed up to my first criminal defense trial, or not trial, but hearing. And they said, you haven't filed a certificate of representation. I'm like, what's this? I've got to inform the court ahead of time. I'm telling you right now that I'm their lawyer. I'm sitting at the table with them. Like, no, we need that written down on this stupid form. It's like, oh, yeah. Okay. And then they start talking about these rule hearings and stuff. And you're like, oh, Jesus, I just want to come in and dismiss this for lack of probable cause. That's all I want to do. But yeah, they don't really get into any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I mean, it doesn't help that, of course, it depends a lot on which jurisdiction you're going into. Every county has their own rules. Every state has their own rules, with a lot of this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Right. And they expect us to read all of them, which I think is really rude.
How dare you make your life easier?
Okay. So you're trying to, or you're working with a company who's trying to take some of the horrific grunt work out of it.
Yeah.
And I have Westlaw. And they have a similar thing now where you can actually upload your brief or your opponent's brief, and it checks all the citations and it sees if there's greater context. Like, it's really like the legal AI stuff is getting really smarter than most attorneys I've run into, which isn't the highest bar. But
I was just thinking, you read my mind. I didn't want to be rude, but I mean,
no, be rude.
I never want to, I never want to denigrate the other fellow members of esteemed members of the bar. But it's true. Sometimes you come across people and you're like, wow, really, anyone can become an attorney.
Yeah, that was the worst part about going to law school. Was I was like, I got accepted, and I was like, cool, I got accepted to law school. Then I went and started talking to people, and I was like, oh, this is immediately less impressive. I question all of my life choices now.
Oh man.
Well, all right. So you've been uploading since, you said, well, you've been monetized, I guess, since July of 2020. So you got monetized really fast.
Fairly quickly. Yeah. I had a couple lucky breaks. My first one was I managed to catch the attention of a video game channel with one of my videos. Because I don't know if you're familiar with gaming channels, but I don't know if you know Game Ranks.
I've heard of them.
Yeah,
I don't watch them, but I've heard of them.
Yeah. So my husband is a huge gaming nerd. So this is how I've become very familiar. This is how I got into Dr. Disrespect and all this kind of stuff. But my husband not only likes to play games, but he also likes to watch YouTube channels about stuff and like the history of video games and all that kind of stuff. I did a video on a game that came out last year called The Last of Us Part 2, and I analyzed. I know that's like
I did a video. I did one too. Yeah,
okay.
It got banned by YouTube.
Oh no!
It's okay. We can talk about it later. Tell me about yours. What's your video on?
Well, so mine was like, I saw how people were pretty much killing each other over Twitter over Joel, over the character Joel, and whether he was, a good guy or a bad guy, if he deserved to die. And so I was like, hold on, I feel like I can use my law degree for this question. So I basically went through the hospital scene at the end of The Last of Us Part 1, where he goes through and he's saving Ellie from, certain death and all this kind of stuff. And I go through and I basically analyzed whether he was justified in killing all of the people that he did. Because if he was justified, then, if it was self-defense, defense of others, that's basically what the analysis was. And so I made the video, and then I tagged Jake Baldino, who's a YouTuber on Game Ranks, and he's got his own channel as well. Really nice guy. And I'd tagged him on Instagram and Twitter or something like that. And then anyway, so they have a Friday show where they kind of talk about the latest in gaming and interesting things that come across their desk. And they gave me a massive shout out. So immediately, this was my second week of uploads. Immediately, I had 1,000 subscribers.
Nice.
Right from there. And then the 4,000 watch time hours came a little bit later, but yeah.
Yeah. That's the fun one. It's when you're first uploading, it's like, man, that's a lot. And it depends on the format of the content that you do. Cause if you do a 6-minute video, it's a lot of views to get 4,000 hours out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and actually Dr. Disrespect was the one that got me over the hump for the 4,000 hours. Because I had my initial video about a year ago talking about his Twitch ban and whether or not he could sue. And that one, just 3 weeks after I uploaded it or something like that, it randomly took off overnight.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love those videos when they do that. It's great.
Yeah.
But when I talk to YouTube, I'm always like, how do I get videos to do that all the time? Can you just send it out later? I know you don't like it now, but please just do that. I think other people will watch it. But wait, I want to know, was Joel justified? Did he deserve to die? We have to know these answers.
Well, you'll have to go and take a look at the video.
No, you're going to do that?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But
LegalBytes is having problems. We're going to remove her from. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, I'm a frozen bot. No. So basically, the TLDR that I that I came to was Joel was mostly justified. Probably not in the very last one when he killed Marlene right before taking off. But for everybody else, I basically was like, nope, justified, defense of self, defense of others. Like he definitely thought that Ellie was going to die. He needed to save her. You know, they were trying to kidnap him, like all this kind of stuff. So
yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So he didn't, well, I mean, he did not and did deserve to die. Perfect. But did he deserve to die at the hands of Abby? That's the real question.
Yeah. I mean, and the question of whether or not he was justified doesn't necessarily get to whether or not he deserved to die. So, you know, you can always say that it was an unjustified killing and that he didn't necessarily deserve to die. I personally was incredibly, horrified and sad, just like, you know, pretty much everybody else when he did die. And the way that he did die, I mean, you know, the horrible, you know, I don't know. I guess we don't need to go into details. I don't want to demonetize this stream.
Oh, have no fear. That'll happen anyway. No, so I never played any of them. Any of the Last of Us games. So I don't really like care about the characters or whatever.
Yeah.
I just got wrapped up in the controversy because other people were talking about it. Mm-hmm. And then it was my buddy Drexel and I were on, and we were having a raucous discussion, we'll say. And we got into talking about the particular love scene, if you could call it that, between the one character and Abby.
Yeah.
And so a guy then made that into a rap song, because of course he did, or a techno song, I guess, and laid it over some footage of the scene. And I uploaded that to my alternative channel, and then YouTube said that this is not appropriate for anyone under 18.
Yeah.
And then they said it was not appropriate for anybody at all, and they removed it. And I had to appeal the ruling, and because they said it showed nudity, and I made the argument that both characters were men, and it only showed them from the waist up, and that worked. YouTube believed me, so I have it.
No, really?
Yep. So I have it on authority from Google, the smartest entity on the planet, that Abby is actually a man. So that's
no. Oh no.
So that was mine. Mine was a little less legally based.
A little bit less legal analysis on that one.
But it's still a great song, and everybody should check it out. The guy who put it together, like I take the credit because I uploaded it because I paid him, I guess, so it's mine. But he did it, and he was fantastically talented. I don't know how to edit video like that, but he did it. He did it great. So that was good. Let me read a couple of these chats that came in right before the stream, and then we can get into start getting into some more stuff. Luden Dozer. I can't read this name. Here's your daily homeschool your crotch goblins reminder. My mother, an LCPS special eds teacher, berated me and called me a mass murderer for the crime of being a white male. Like, damn, bitch, I'm not the one that effed the white male. Miss me with that shit. Okay. So yeah, because of this guy's experience, homeschool your kids. I agree. Jay Sean Lemoyne, I apologize. They make me do some voices from time to time. So
okay.
Hey, Nick, I wasn't able to send you any hate earlier, so I'm doing it now. Legal has better hair than you. Also, he's a better lawyer, you cuck. Rude. You know that Devin is not, he doesn't even practice law. He does not. I promise. He's a great asset to that law firm because he brings in a ton of business. And then finally, Bu is still alive, says, off topic, the State Department confirmed that no Americans died in Japan in the month of June. Bu did not yeet himself. He is still alive, and now we get to laugh at all the neuroatypical individuals on Twitter who listened and believed. Okay, sorry. This is do you know about the Near/Bu situation? All right.
I am unfamiliar. You're going to have to go through the painful experience of explaining it.
And I barely know about this, but this is in the realm of video game emulation, right? Which is like its own niche thing. Are you familiar with video game emulators and stuff like that?
Less so.
So if you want to play an Atari 2600 game, right? Like you can't just plug in a disc into your computer and play it.
Right.
You have to have some level of software that will emulate the environment. It'll take some resources of your computer and create basically a virtual 2600. And then you have to have someone who can convert the original file into a ROM file that will then be readable by the emulator. All right. So this guy, Bew, is I think it's safe and not hateful to say that Bew is a complete weirdo, but is very big in the emulation community for doing a lot of emulation work and then some a translation of some Japanese game into English or something like that. All right. And then are you familiar with the kiwi farms?
No.
Oh God. We should end the stream now to save this nice normal person. Okay, so Kiwi Farms is one of these website forums full of degenerate, horrible, hateful people, and every single one of them is a terrible human being who should probably be executed in Mao's China. But anyway.
Wow.
What Kiwi
so
Farms
like, middle of the road.
Yep. They're straight down the middle. No, Kiwi Farms is just a place where people go and they can talk about whatever they want. It's an internet message board. And so they typically focus on celebrities or e-celebrities. And they will compile information and bitch about them or praise them or whatever, and just have discussion threads all over the place. So Bew had a very small discussion thread on Kiwi Farms, about 13 pages, which is like 140 posts or something. And then someone posted as a friend of BU saying they killed themselves and that the suicide note blamed the Kiwi Farms, basically.
Oh, wow.
Long story short. And this would be, I think, the third or fourth suicide blamed on the Kiwi Farms because they talk about people, and some people who get talked about don't want people to say things that are mean about them, right? And so
I mean, that's most people, I would say.
Well, except for the broken ones.
I guess so.
But no. Yeah, so some people will get really wrapped up in what anonymous people on the internet think about them, and then apparently that can get to them, and allegedly they had killed themselves because of Kiwi Farms. This person is saying that they checked, or someone has checked with the American State Department in Japan, because Bew was in Japan, and they confirmed that no Americans died in Japan in the month of June. And so therefore the person must not have killed themselves, which would be, that was the big controversy, is this person Bew was completely anonymous. No one had ever identified them or anything like that. And so saying that they killed themselves is an easy way to they could just rebrand, right? And be anybody else. So who knows? Sorry, you have to hear, but this is this is the area of the internet that no one should ever have to acknowledge.
No worries. No, it's I'm getting an education. It's great.
Oh God. Yeah. It's like when you go to law school and they're like, well, to get you familiar with things, we're going to watch people be dismembered, so you understand why execution is bad. That's what just happened. So anyway, let's move on from this horrific subject. You are far too pure for this world. Okay, so you get started. You get the big shout out initially from Game Rants on The Last of Us. You talk about Dr. Disrespect when he first is kicked off of Twitch, which is a big shock. And that would have been June 22nd, I think, right? Of
Something
2020.
like that,
yeah, because Mixer shut down he was kicked off June 26th because Mixer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Mixer shut down on the 22nd, and it was 4 magical days. after Mixer was gone, that suddenly all those exclusivity deals that were in every single news item all stopped. There's no more talk about them ever again.
Yeah, because there was no more like arms race between the two platforms, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that definitely may have had something to do with it. I mean, it seems like the public at large, like Dr. Disrespect has said that he knows why he was kicked off the platform. But he hasn't, at least not that I've seen, he hasn't said what that reason is. So the general public doesn't have much information as to what exactly it was that kicked him off. But from what we can gather, at least Dr. Disrespect does not think that it was a good reason for kicking him off.
Right. Yeah. So for months and months, he said he didn't know. And there's some controversy over this because when he the last stream that he did, something happened. He got a text or something.
Yeah.
And the last couple minutes of that stream got really weird. He acted completely different, because he's a character. He acts in character, does a whole show as a character, and he left that character, and things were awkward.
Yeah.
And then he was removed. And so some people have speculated that he's known for a long time what has happened, but he always maintained that he never actually knew. And I think as lawyers, we can help people navigate that you might have an idea, but until someone tells you exactly why they did something, you don't actually know. And that was always kind of the problem with me. And it's the problem I have with a lot of these social media deplatformings, whether they come, from someone like a Dr. Disrespect with an exclusivity agreement and a specialized contract, or they go all the way down to regular terms of service plebeians like us, where for some, in like every other area of contract law, if a contract is breached, the other party has some sort of duty to let you know where the breach is, to either remedy it or to suggest that you didn't breach.
Yeah. And that is something that that came out in Phantoml0rd's lawsuit against Twitch, was that his contract at least basically said that when there is a breach, the other party needs to have at least 30 days to cure the breach before it's just completely broken. And that was something that Twitch did not give any sort of an opportunity to cure, apparently. And that was Phantoml0rd's contract. Obviously, we don't know also what was in Dr. Disrespect's contract. So that's another, sort of cloud on the subject that we can sort of speculate. We can maybe put some things together based on what we know elsewhere, but it could be different.
Now, did Phantoml0rd have a custom contract, or was it just a general adhesion contract that the Twitch partner program engaged?
No, he had a very similar situation where he had a negotiated contract with Twitch from, I want to say 2015, is when he signed it, and then he was kicked off in 2016, and then filed in 2018, and then just now this last April got his verdict.
I'm shocked to find out that Twitch was doing custom agreements with people in 2015, negotiated contracts. Like, it's such a foreign thing to me that these things even exist in the tech world. And one of the biggest surprises for me was in the Parler versus Amazon lawsuit that's still kind of going on, that you find out that Parler, which was a $1 billion company prior to getting removed from Amazon, had just the standard Amazon Web Services or Amazon Cloud Services contract that anybody else would have. And it was like, this is a $1 billion company. And the big tech company's like, yeah, no, you just get the same thing everybody else does.
Well, yeah, I think that's something kind of sort of similar with Twitch, though, is that even though they had these negotiated contracts, they made some really big mistakes in those contracts that they ended up kind of eating in the Phantoml0rd lawsuit, and they might end up eating in Dr. Disrespect's lawsuit too. So for example, the contract did not reference the terms of service or the community guidelines anywhere. I mean, that's like the biggest thing that I was floored about, because I would have assumed that, like anytime you have any sort of an agreement between two parties and you have other possible, sources of authority, you're going to want to mention them, because you're going to want to either say, this is part of this agreement, this is not part of this agreement, because otherwise you have ambiguity. And that's just, ambiguity is the best friend of a litigator, right?
Right.
But yeah, they didn't reference the terms of service or the community guidelines. And that ended up really, really benefiting Phantoml0rd, because when Twitch tried to argue on summary judgment that this was a Section 230 case and that therefore it should go away immediately, the judge was like, no, this is not a Section 230 case, because there's nothing in this contract about terms of service or community guidelines. This is a contract. This is contract law. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's such an important thing to incorporate outside documents that typically it's done in the first line or paragraph of any agreement. Like if you go on YouTube right now and you look at the YouTube Partnership Program Agreement, you'll find that it immediately references those two community guidelines in terms of service in, I think it's the opening line. Is that this agreement incorporates the terms of service and community guidelines. Anything not expressly contradictory herein is, covered by those. And that's part of the agreement. And you have to have that. So it's really shocking to see that, especially on a negotiated agreement, that they would do that.
Yeah.
But I would contend that, that 230 should also not preclude a lawsuit that's based on breach of contract just because the contract happens to include terms of service and community guidelines.
And it would be interesting too. I'm sorry, I'm totally cutting you off.
Ahead. Please do. I was gonna say, you're the important one here.
No, I was going to say it would be interesting too if the judge came out that way, even if it referenced the terms of service and the community guidelines. But that's a little bit more of that's a little bit less certain, I should say, because there's a little bit of a chance there, right? Because I mean, if you look at the case law on Section 230 cases, anytime the parties, one of the parties successfully characterizes it as a moderation case, an issue of content moderation, courts are very, very generous to social media platforms under Section 230. It's a very powerful law.
Yeah, it's the absolute worst thing, in my opinion, because the way I see 230 was intended to work, right, was not in the scope of multi-million-dollar contracts or even six-figure partnership agreements. Like, YouTube creators, I can't remember this. This is years and years ago. They talked about they doubled the amount of people who earn six figures or more on the platform. And I think that's something that happens, pretty much every year. They have that type of growth from the creator side. And so it's like, okay, you're talking about these rather big business agreements. Most small businesses would be happy to have six-figure partnership agreements with someone. So you're getting these things, having people making $200,000 a year of revenue from a source, and you're going to just let that shut down with no ability to cure, despite you can have all of the contract language in the world, but if they determine its terms of service, you don't even get to ask the question of the courts. And to me, like, that is one of the more egregious abuses of 230's original intent of let's keep naked pictures of kids off of the internet. Like, let's do that was the goal. And now it's like, well, let's get rid of this streamer because he said something we don't like. Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been, I mean, if you look back at when Section 230 was started, I mean, the internet wasn't really even much of a thing at all. I mean, that's what people credit for, for the growth of the internet is Section 230. And I think that, at the time that the legislation was passed, it probably was right for what the situation was. But given the ways in which the internet has grown and that these big tech companies have grown, and how much they impact people's everyday lives, the law probably needs to be looked at, revisited in some form. And I know that that general concept is probably accepted more on a bipartisan level,
Right.
The reason for it is different. So what that would look like upon being revisited is different if you ask a Democrat versus a Republican.
Yeah. Well, that was fascinating about the 230 hearings where they had Dorsey and the android that replaced Mark Zuckerberg answering questions. Is you had some uniformity between the senators. All of them want reform of 230. The Republicans are basically saying it needs to be peeled back or abolished. And the Democrat senators were saying, no, we want more. I won't call it censorship. We want more moderation. We want a higher level of moderation. We want to give you more power to moderate. And I'm like, to me, that's anathema. I hate moderation of any type. I want everybody to be able to say everything that they want and then let the chips fall where they may. That's my personal opinion, but other, there's a bunch of people who think that isn't how it should be. And so, but 230 it's such a weird, I used to be for abolishing it. And now I'm like, I thought it would be funny to see Twitter sued into oblivion in one day. But now I'm like, I want a little bit more moderated approach. I do think it needs reform though.
Well, and actually, when it comes to abolishing Section 230, voices on both sides of the political spectrum have expressed that intent also. Like President Biden, back when he was a senator, and I think even when he was running for president, he talked about just getting rid of Section 230 altogether also.
Well, he doesn't remember that far back. Sorry. I'll stop.
An argument can be made that someone else is talking in his ear. But when it comes to politics, it's like, it seems like depending on the year or even the season, it could be one side or the other calling for a particular result. Right. But I think that at the end of the day, I mean, and I've definitely thought about too, like whether it would require, new legislation or whether the Supreme Court could get involved. Because I know that a number of justices on the Supreme Court have also talked about how the Section 230 laws are they've gotten a little bit out of control. But I don't know. Have you thought about that?
Oh yeah. I think Thomas is chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
I think Thomas is chomping at the bit to rein in big tech and social media in general. His talks on New York Times versus Sullivan needing a redo or a relook. His talks is pretty specifically about 230 and the idea that we can't regulate these companies. Like, of course we can. We regulate all sorts of communication companies to make them take all comers. Why are these different? So yeah, I'm on Thomas's side on this argument. I think I think that big tech companies are something akin to a common carrier. And I think that we need to figure that if Congress won't do it, the courts, I guess, are going to have to. But there needs to be a way to allow people access to the global communication market, because when you think about it, it's how people are accessing their politicians. It's how people get customer service. I mean, I got a couple years, 2019, my flight, I was in Houston for an anime convention because I'm that type of horrific person. And my flight got canceled by the rain at night, in the middle of the night. It was the last flight out. And so I went to the line. I was flying United because God hated me that day. And so they directed us to the United desk in the Houston airport. So we walked through like 3 terminals and I get there and there's already like 200 people in line. And I'm the first person from my flight to get there. Cause I told my wife, I'm like, you walk slow. I'm going to walk like a person. I'm going to get there. And so I got there right away and we just sat. So I pulled up Twitter and I complained to United Airlines on Twitter and got a direct message. And then through my Twitter direct messages was able to resolve getting my ticket refunded And then I got, I got on I booked a flight to Delta on my phone. It's like, and I left the line that hadn't moved, and it still took an hour to do this by direct message, and the line hadn't moved at all. It was like, there's no way. So wait, and you see this with a lot of companies where their only customer service is Twitter direct message. It's like, you can't ban people from their ability to participate in the market, their ability to participate in their government. And that's what's really going on Twitter 9 times out of 10. It is the democratic part of our republic is happening in this marketplace. And we're saying just because some weirdo with a giant beard owns it, that we're gonna say that he can create algorithmic processes to control who gets to be on and off. I don't think so. You can't.
Yeah.
If you made a robot that kicked people out of parks based on how they looked, like, that would be wrong. And I think it's wrong on Twitter as well.
Yeah. 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 I think that there definitely is a lot of weight that should be placed on the fact that, private companies should be able to do what it is that they want. But at the same time, there are laws on big private companies, right? Like, the bigger a company gets, the more the government has an interest in protecting consumers from them, because they can definitely throw their weight around and impact consumers in a bad way. And that is something that, there's been a lot of saber rattling over the last couple of years in Congress over antitrust laws for big tech as well. But it's so whether these sort of issues get resolved with a modification of Section 230, or a new analysis by the Supreme Court on Section 230, or whether they do it with new antitrust laws, I don't know. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I love that. The private company should be able to do whatever they want thing is always said. When the political agenda, just when the political agenda aligns. And it's like, when I open my law firm, I ordered a sign to be printed to hang on the building. And I talked to the guy. I'm like, hey, my landlord, I'm like, hey, Jim, can I throw a big friggin' sign up on the building? He's like, yeah, whatever. Make sure you get a permit from the city. And I'm like, permit from the city? This is your building. Like, what business out there on earth can do whatever they want? It's amazing how libertarian everyone is when we start talking about 230. And then it's like, find a single business that can make whatever decision it wants, or even basic decisions about its daily operation. Kids' lemonade stands are getting shut down by police in California because they don't have a business license from the Secretary of State. Yeah. And we're supposed to believe that, Twitter and Facebook can kick off whoever they want. This kid can't sell 25-cent lemonade.
Or people, I relatively recently came across, when I was doom scrolling Twitter, something about like how a ton of people are getting ticketed in New York because they had like lost their jobs. And so their ways to survive during the pandemic was to open up these like food sales carts, on the streets. And a lot of them are not permitted. And now they're getting into deep water with the city because they don't have the permits that they need. So
I had a buddy who, they homeschool, right? They had 9 kids, which I'm like, oh my God. I have 5, by the way. 9 is, 9's a lot.
9 is a lot. I don't have kids yet, but I have a small zoo, as you can see behind me.
Yeah. So
we'll have kids eventually, but
they had 9 kids, and part of their homeschooling curriculum, and I think this is great, is they had a 1-acre garden. The kids managed the garden, and then they would open a vegetable stand in the summer, and they would sell vegetables to people who came by. And the dad, he's an avid barbecue enthusiast. In Minnesota, this is hard to find. So he decides, well, my kids are sitting here selling vegetables or pickles that we make or whatever. And so he decides that he'll sell brisket on Saturdays. And so you could go to their house, and for like $5, you get a plate of brisket, cowboy beans, some homemade pickles. For an extra $1, you get a can of soda, and you can sit down on a picnic table in their yard and eat, right? Very simple. Well, some government busybody found out about it, and they threatened him with a fine of $10,000 a day until he shut down, because his barbecue pit was not what is it? It's like NSA compliant or whatever, the restaurant standard.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's a barbecue pit. But so they, again, this idea that anybody that private entities can do anything without the government's intervention is great. Even if you're not regulated specifically on a specific thing, the government is still sniffing around to see if maybe you should be. And like, oh, are you violating something? You'll have someone come out and or call your business and ask you questions about it. It's like, okay, stop.
Yeah. So, that's always fun.
Yeah. Fun's the word for it. Okay. Let me do a couple more chats, and then I want to talk kind of specifically about the Phantoml0rd lawsuit, and we can do some speculation on Dr. Disrespect.
Yeah.
At that.
Love speculating.
Bearded Mountain says, ask the question, Nick. I don't know what they're talking about. Are you a sports fan?
I am a big Dodgers fan.
A Dodgers fan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad grew up in Queens when they were the Brooklyn Dodgers. So we've been even though technically, growing up I lived maybe closer to Angel Stadium than Dodger Stadium. We grew up big Dodgers fans.
Okay. So what about hockey?
Less so. I mean, well, okay. So here's one tiny little claim to fame related to hockey that I have is when
you have a claim to fame related to hockey,
having to do the Mighty Ducks, the Mighty Ducks back when they were the Mighty Ducks. But so when I don't know if you saw either of any of the Mighty Ducks movies.
Yeah, they were filmed. Actually, the first one, the mall scene where they all like are rollerblading around, that was filmed in the mall where I used to hang out as a kid.
Oh, okay. So I was an extra in the D2 in the second one. You would never be able to find me because I'm literally like one of a million in a crowd in a stadium. But that was like
autism. Get on it. You'll find it. little circle on a crowd scene.
Little baby LegalBytes. But yeah, it's funny because it's like I barely even remember it because I was so young. I remember asking my brother about it. I was like that was fun, right? That was fun. And he was like, it was actually really boring. We spent most of the day in line and just like outside, just standing outside the stadium. But it's a fun little claim to fame.
Okay, good. But it seems like you prefer like the sports that, no, I can't even do this. God, the chat is degenerate and we're just going to skip it.
I mean, I see what the question is. I haven't seen you actually ask anyone this, but anyway.
Do you want me to ask you the question? You grew up with brothers?
I did grow up with a lot of brothers.
Do you watch anime, or does your husband watch anime?
No.
God, you just why chat? Why do you do this to me? So in anime, God, hold on. Let me pray first. In anime, there's a thing called futanari.
Okay.
And it's a female, but she also has a man part, like both parts.
Okay.
So the question is on
intersex. I think that's technically right. That's like the medical term for it.
That would be the medical term if it wasn't anime, because in like an intersex person, typically they have both organs, but one of them is inert, right? Like like they wouldn't have functional ovaries or they wouldn't have functional testes, right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
But the question is in this case, in anime, would you prefer balls or no balls on your intersex futanari? And if your husband kills me, I'll understand. Like, it'll be fine. I'll get it.
I'm not going to answer that question, but I think it's hilarious.
Okay. You answered correctly. The first guest to actually do it. Right. Generalissimo says, I hate the chat. I hate them so much. Arrived late to Friday stream. You were avoiding talking about Vax. Sent a Vax chat. Oops. We'll take your advice and not apologize. If we chat didn't scuttle at grants on the secret deal to televise your transition surgery. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Generalissimo. That talk about the Vax because it's YouTube and I don't want to ever talk. God, it's awful. Peter P. Hey, Jew boy, who's the blender I just got here? Blender? I don't know what that means. I think they mean you, but I don't know what the term means. This is LegalBytes. And she's nice. Be nice, chat. Generalissimo says, on second thought, if you're going to get free surgery, then get rhinoplasty. Ever hear the London walkie-talkie skyscraper that was starting fires in parked cars just by reflecting sunlight? Think of your family. Okay. I get it. Thank you. My nose is a subject of much discussion on this channel.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that on Twitter, which is, it's funny because, like, I mean, I've got a bit of a nose too.
That if we have
maybe
a nose,
maybe not from like forward, but on the profile.
Oh no!
Yeah, I know. I know it's funny because so my dad was divorced twice before he married my mom, so I actually come from quite a large family as well. My dad's second wife was Peruvian, so I have two half siblings that kind of look like me, but they're just darker. It's always funny to like walk around and like meet people that are like friends with them or friends with us and be like, this is my sibling. They're like, no, it's not. And we're like, yes, it is. Take a look at our nose. We all have the same one.
Adam Krigler says my nose is greater than your nose. I think he means bigger than, but yeah, that works. Painful Buggery says, I'm a biologist. This is going back to your Joel analysis. The Firefly's bafflingly stupid plan for a cure was doomed to fail horrifically. Joel did the world a favor, made part 2's moral ambiguity theme fall flat. Also, what is your dog's name?
Her name is Indy, like Indiana Jones.
Okay, there you go. Good name for a dog.
Yeah.
Mithrin Emrys says, in Packingham versus North Carolina, SCOTUS stated in dicta that social media has become the modern equivalent of the public square. Hopefully that dicta leads to needed reform if Congress refuses to do it. We'll see. Okay, let's get back to the important stuff. None of this anime nonsense. Is that a Star Wars lunchbox on your shelf back there?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Are you the Star Wars fan or your husband or both?
I mean, we both are. Yeah, we both are. Yeah.
Who's the real one though?
I mean, I would say I grew up playing with PVC pipe lightsabers with my siblings in the backyard before LED lightsabers were a thing. So I don't know. I would venture to say that I probably am.
Sounds like it to me. That's what I was thinking. Okay.
I'm definitely more of a Marvel fan than he is.
More of a Marvel fan.
Yeah, he stopped watching all of the MCU movies a while ago because he's got a thing about it. It's a thing. We argue about it sometimes. It's fine.
What's his thing about it?
I mean, his point, and it's a well taken point. Basically, it's that that people anyway, chat, I'm guessing.
No, I'm happy about this conversation. This is great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, his point is that there's only so many resources in the movie industry, and he kind of laments the days when we had more movies like I don't know what, like Die Hard and Top Gun and like all kinds of like more movies that were just interesting and different and didn't instantly become like a 10-part series,
Okay.
So
yeah, I think I agree with him.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I get it, but I also I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a day when I will not watch the MCU movies and TV shows. What's your favorite
MCU movie? Or what's your favorite MCU thing, movie or TV show? Because let's expand it.
So I actually really liked WandaVision. I thought it was really
Okay.
interesting and unique. It took me a little while to get into it, but I really enjoyed it. But I think in terms of like which movies could I go back and rewatch like over and over again? I think Black Panther's one, but I think maybe Doctor Strange is probably my favorite.
My wife loves that Doctor Strange movie. I think she
It's
has a
really
thing
good.
for, but I think she has a thing for Benedict Cumberbatch. I think that's the problem there.
Could be. He's been in a lot of like period dramas and stuff like that. I think
Yeah, I'm
before,
glad
right?
she has a thing for him though, because I'm pretty sure I could beat him up, but like I would have trouble with maybe Chris Evans or someone stronger.
That's
So
fair.
yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never
But
watched WandaVision. I wanted to watch it, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
okay. Yeah, no, I liked it. I liked it. I liked Loki also. That was the another show that came on. But yeah, I mean, I grew up watching the X-Men TV show, like the cartoon show. Like that was like
Yeah.
part of my childhood. So I mean, yeah.
See, and I
got
grew
to meet
up
Stan Lee when
watching.
I was a kid.
Really?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Die Hard and Top Gun and Predator. So I'm like, that's where I go with it.
Yeah.
I do remember Morph dying though at the beginning. Well, kind of dying, like they bring him back or whatever. Spoilers, 30 years later or whatever. But you know, like it's like the first episode, Morph gets just smashed or crushed or killed by a sentinel. I don't remember how he died. And you're like, what? How does Morph die? And then he comes back later and he's a bad guy. Stupid Morph. Pissed me off. Anyway. Okay. Let's talk about Phantoml0rd's lawsuit, first of all. And let's talk kind of his situation, because I briefly talked about it a while back, but I never got really deep into it. So can you give us a background on what happened to Phantoml0rd, how he got banned, like what the said reasoning was, and then we can kind of talk about the lawsuit itself.
So he got banned back in 2016, and it was very similar to Dr. Disrespect's situation, where there wasn't really a stated reason why. Twitch just kind of at least my understanding is that Twitch was just kind of like leaving people to speculate, and then the public just sort of filled in the gaps themselves.
Sure.
I know that there was a bit of controversy around some of the stuff that he was doing on stream. He played a lot of CS:GO, and so he also would do a lot of CS:GO shuffle streams. So CS:GO Shuffle, for anybody that doesn't know, is basically like a third-party website where you could go and you could essentially gamble for skins to use in CS:GO. And some of these could be very high-valued skins. And so a lot of people lost a lot of money because it's gambling. That's what happens when you gamble. But there was also sort of this, like, it seems like there was a rumor that started to perk up about, you know, he was doing so many promotions for CS:GO Shuffle. Does he own a part of it? Is he, you know, scamming everyone, you know, with it? Because, you know, he can, if he owns part of it, then he can manipulate the odds on, you know, what he wins versus what other people are winning.
Right.
So that kind of is essentially what it seems like the public decided to rest on, was that he was kicked off for being an undisclosed owner of CS:GO Shuffle and for defrauding his viewers, essentially.
Yeah, that's what, when I talked about, because see, I had heard something different, and maybe this is part of the story. I had heard he was banned for a much weirder thing, that he had a gaming stream up, but for over 30 minutes was not engaged in playing the game, and that Twitch removed him for that. That's what I had initially heard. And then people were like, no, it was the manipulation of the CS:GO Shuffle thing.
Yeah.
So
actually when he filed the lawsuit, Twitch eventually countersued with basically that as their main claim, to say that he was kicked off because he was defrauding viewers and all that kind of stuff. violating the terms of service. And so that actually became a central part of the lawsuit that had to be proved or disproved. So there was a lot of discovery around that. They were able to request pretty much all of his financial statements from that time, his tax documents, pretty much anything having to do with CSGO Shuffle. And the jury ended up not finding that that he was a part owner of CSGO Shuffle.
It's amazing that like the question of ownership of an entity becomes a fact question for a jury, because it seems really simple, right? Like you either owned something or you didn't own something. And to then leave that to a jury is such a weird artifact of the legal process.
Yeah.
Like you own this, prove it. Well, do you though? So what do you think? Did he actually own it? Like, did he hoodwink everybody, or does he legit not own it? I
mean, I asked him about it because I had him on my channel, him and his attorney, Bill Quinlan. I had them on a live stream after the trial ended. And we talked about that. You know, as much as he probably is tired of talking about that whole thing, because I think it's just something has followed him around for years.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in a suit alone for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but the CSGO Shuffle issue, I think specifically, is something that he probably just doesn't want to talk about as much. But I mean, yeah, I asked him, you know, in discovery, like, what were they able to take a look at of your stuff? Is there anything that they weren't able to look at, you know, that you have or whatever? And he was like, we gave them everything that they asked for, and there's absolutely nothing. And so I'm personally fairly convinced that he probably is not an owner in this issue. Like, I know that it's something that's probably still going to follow him for a long time, which I think is unfortunate because, I mean, yeah.
And I mean, that's how these things go. It is unfortunate that that things can follow people when they're not true. But it's such an interesting thing. It seems like it'd be simple to determine whether or not he was an owner. It's like, did they subpoena Counter-Strike Go Shuffle for their management agreements, their operating agreements? Did they ever find his signature on anything? Did they find payments to him? Like, I guess there would be payments, right?
For promotions.
Because he's
there would also be like at least emails or some other kind of agreements outlining the details of the promotion.
Yeah. You'd think. So that's wild. God, what a weird thing. Okay, so did we ever find out what he was banned for? Like, because it seems like Twitch would have some sort of record of that. Did he get any of that in discovery?
So he was able to get all of like the emails talking about him. And I think that ultimately, if I remember correctly, the reason why he was banned was like, it was just a nonsensical reason. It had to do with something that they have called a strike guide. So Twitch has or had, they might still have this. I don't know if they've changed this since the lawsuit, but what came out in discovery was that they had something called a strike guide. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet, color coded, all kinds of craziness, where they basically had, you know, different standards for the terms of service depending on who you are. So if you are somebody that they favor, because let's say you bring in a ton of money, let's say you've got a hot tub stream that makes a ton of money for Twitch.
Oh, don't talk about Amaranth that way.
I mean, hey, you know what? Everybody's going to do whatever they're going to do for a living. I'm not going to knock any of that, but I am going to knock the way that Twitch might be treating different streamers differently, having different standards for them. But yeah, this strike guide, it apparently shows, I haven't been able to see it. His attorney, when they were on the live stream with me, they said that it's probably not going to be kept secret because it came out in trial. They were able to talk about it, but they weren't at the time able to release it because Twitch still wanted to have redactions and kind of stuff because not everything came into evidence. So, so at some point, hopefully that'll be made public. That would be very, very interesting to look at, because it shows that Twitch is treating some people very differently than other people. So
yeah, Amaranth and Indie Fox, hard to name a few, get very, and Alinity at the, I don't know if Alinity is still around, but I mean, she's violated terms of service on Twitch like 100 times, and she keeps coming back. And then other people have, you know, someone in their chat say something, and then they get banned for not moderating it. It's like, wait a minute now, this is ridiculous. But yeah, it's, and you know, to some extent, that's to be expected. If someone makes you $100,000, you care more about that person than the person who makes you 12, right? Like that. But there should be some transparency to this. That's I think at the root of all these social media things, is like, there's just no transparency. There's no reviewability. And when people get caught in something, it's termination and they're done. Right. And there's often no recourse, and you're just left there holding the bag. Like, what am I supposed to do about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And
he's like, but I'm eating that. What are you doing? I'm that's mine.
I know. She has destroyed a number of pillows recently. She's in a little bit of a pillow sort of mood. But this is one that I would prefer to not have to get repaired.
Yeah, no kidding.
But she's good overall. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I definitely agree. And I think that if I were to wave a magic wand and either have the Supreme Court review it, or have Section 230 be revised by Congress, I mean, what I would look at is adding some sort of due process controls in there, or honing in on the good faith aspect of moderation that is technically required under Section 230 that doesn't seem to get really talked about anywhere, because Section 230 technically it protects people that are making good faith moderation efforts. Right. So, you know, that is something that is important. But, you know, what is the definition of good faith in these kind of situations? How do we know if it's good faith? You know, we kind of have been sort of taking that at face value, I think, in most of these cases. But whether that is true or not is, you know, definitely up for debate.
Right, because in DMCA, for example, you know, there's a big DMCA ruling. It's Lens versus Universal Music Group. And it was the case was a woman. She's recording her little kid dancing, and in the background was a Prince song, right? And so there's some short segment of this Prince song, kids dancing to it. The point of the video is obviously the kid dancing, but Universal Media Group or Music Group or whoever it is, they struck the video that she posted. Yeah. And then this thing actually goes to court because I think the Electronic Frontier Foundation or something took it up, and it goes through the end, and they found out that they didn't do a good faith fair use analysis because it was algorithmically determined. So anytime any segment of music over a small period of time was detected, it would automatically issue the strike, and there was no human review. And so it's like this big win because she won attorney's fees and everything from them for not doing that good faith review. But then you find out that like a good faith review, even from a multi-billion-dollar recording label, is literally just them going, well, we looked at it and we agree that it's copyright infringement. And that's the good faith review. Like we don't think it's fair use, so therefore it isn't. And it's like, well, that's not a definition. That's just them doing anything more than having a robot determine it. So yeah, what does good faith mean on 230? We have no idea. But you were doing a stream the other day with I was walking I think to the airport from my hotel, and you were on with Nate the lawyer and Uncivil Law. Yeah. And you brought up something that's really important, as specifically for Twitch, or it should be. and that is Washington has an implied duty of good faith and fair dealing in their contracts, which I think that could end up being a really important piece of Dr. Disrespect's lawsuit.
Yes.
And it should be a really important piece of Amazon versus Parler if Parler's lawyer would bother to bring it up. But that's been something that, you know, it depends on the state you're in. Some of them have implied duties. Some of them require express duties in the contract, but Washington State doesn't require it, and they enforce on it. Which is kind of the different thing. So I guess that would be the question with Dr. Disrespect, right? Are they following this duty of good faith and fair dealing? But
I mean, look, I mean, if they've decided that they can just get rid of these contracts for nothing, then no, then they aren't, you know, acting in good faith and with any sort of good dealing or fair dealing, you know, because they have to basically, they can't, I mean, so for anyone that isn't familiar with the concept, it's basically when you enter into a contract with someone else, you have to act in such a way so as you're not just like willingly going to sabotage it, or you're not just going to say like, okay, well, I'm just going to pretend this doesn't exist anymore. You are bound to a certain respect, even if you have terms that are favorable to yourself that give you a lot of leeway, you know, within that contract. So Twitch, you know, even with, you know, we talked earlier about how in Phantoml0rd's contract, there was no mention of any terms of service or any community guidelines. More recent contracts, my understanding is that they've started to add that in since this lawsuit. Twitch was like, oh, oopsies, let's add that in. But I think, you know, even outside of that, even with the terms of service and the community guidelines, you know, when you are entering into a contract, you can't just pretend that contract doesn't exist, or you can't pretend that the other side can't hold your behavior to a certain standard as well, because that goes against that concept of good faith and fair dealing.
Yeah, it's a strange concept in some ways, because most people think when you negotiate out a contract, you're negotiating for the most aggressively for your self-interest. You're sacrificing as little as possible to gain the maximum that you possibly can. And so that is sort of the contract. And it's almost like this adversarial relationship between the contracting parties to extract as much value for themselves as they can while giving up as little as possible. But in states with the good faith and fair dealing, you always have to work to the mutual benefit of the contract. So you have a legal obligation to try and make the contract work for the other party. And that just doesn't seem to fly in any case where these social media companies or big tech companies are just cutting deals off. And that's because under general contract law, the idea was that everybody, again, I love that our legal system is based on the old school ideas about capitalism where everybody just tries to earn money, and they're not prepared for the concept of companies shutting off revenue streams for some sort of alternative value that they find in maybe like a social presence or reputational thing or whatever. That was never like part of the initial formulation of contract law. They're like, why wouldn't you want money from this person?
Right.
Yeah. I find it to be very strange. So what do you think? What do you make of Dr. Disrespect's? I mean, his statement was pretty interesting coming at this point in time. It seemed to be a response to like a super chat, basically, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see it within the greater context of his overall stream, and it was surprising because he's been very, very tight about talking about it. Like, he basically has been saying like, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to move on. I want to go back to streaming and make money. But so I don't know exactly what sparked it here, but my guess is if he found out within the last few months what the reason for getting kicked off, my guess is there may have been something that opened up as a result of Phantoml0rd's lawsuit, because his trial happened in April. I think it was late April. I want to say that he got his result from the trial. maybe mid-April. So that could explain the last few months, Dr. Disrespect coming to a conclusion as to what happened. Because my understanding is they talked about him quite a bit in the Phantoml0rd depositions and stuff.
I wonder if also if it was just a sign someone can actually win one of these.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the thing. If he enters into this lawsuit and launches a full out assault on Twitch and then loses, and because a judge decides for whatever reason that they're going to award fees to Twitch and stuff like that, I mean, that can, no matter how much money he's made, that could clean him out pretty quick. And we can all assume that he did not see the full benefit of his exclusivity agreement that he had for just a couple days or just a couple weeks or whatever. Because I think he had it for like a month or something. It was like renewed in May.
It was March 2020 that he signed it.
Okay. And
then the end of June, he got kicked off.
Yeah. So he has it for a couple months. There's no way they had paid him out. And so that's been one of that of course is the other nefarious part of this. They choke off the income and the ability to fight back at the level that he would have. It's like, well, if you have a $10 million deal, you should be able to hire a really competent legal team, except you don't have a $10 million deal anymore. Now you have whatever you can scrape together on YouTube, and he does really well. But I think he even mentioned on that same stream, he's doing like not even a quarter of what he was making over on Twitch.
Yeah. Well, and I think a large part of it too is the fact that the branding deals have also largely gone away, because as soon as that sort of cloud of mystery sort of formed above his head as to what had happened, because there was a previous time when he had been temporarily kicked off because he had recorded someone in a bathroom or something like that. It was at some kind of a convention. There was something like that had happened. And so because he had that sort of thing in his history, so many people were like, oh, maybe he's got some sort of civil liability or criminal liability. Maybe he did something wrong that he's going to be arrested for something. And no brand wants to be around that, right? Like, no, like G Fuel does not want to have anything to do with that. So a lot of these, and he had quite a few brands that just overnight went away. And I think he said in that same stream also that he's like, these brands, like, they haven't really wanted to work with me, because why would you, when there's a huge question as to what this person may have done?
Right. And well, the other thing that they may not want to say is that Twitch has been so heavy-handed on the Dr. Disrespect ban, where if he shows up in a game with someone else, they can have their channel suspended for a couple days or whatever. Those advertisers advertise on Twitch, right? Like they were advertising on his channel on Twitch. And if Twitch decides that G Fuel is cozying up to Dr. Disrespect, and they'd say, okay, no more brand deals with Twitch creators, they could in theory do something like that. I mean, YouTube controls has approved sponsored content, and like if you try and advertise certain shops outside of YouTube's approved website list, you can't do it, and they'll shut your channel down for that. So they've created this nice little intimidation chamber around Dr. Disrespect, which that to me is one of the scarier parts.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, especially because it's like, you spend so many years building a brand and cultivating a business out of this whole endeavor that he's gone into, and the fact that can go away pretty much overnight is just a little bit terrifying. So
that because and that's it's one of the only areas where that can really happen, is this new social media marketplace where fortunes can be made very quickly, but at the same time, the ability to make those fortunes can be arbitrarily removed from you in a heartbeat. And we're supposed to just say that that's okay, that no one can do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm really excited, but now we got to get him to file the document. Doc, what are you doing? Put
yeah.
that paper to practice. Get out there. You're the
I know we
two-time.
need something to talk about.
Exactly. Champions League needs to get on his ass and get him out there filing some damn paperwork so we can start telling people that it's good or bad or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me grab a couple more of these chats. Renee Villarreal says, that's his name, Henry Jones Jr. We named the dog Indiana.
Yep. I'm referring to my dog.
Right.
Because that's actually kind of why we named her in Indy or Indiana is referencing the movie when he's like, oh, Indiana, we named the dog Indiana. So it's always fun when people get that.
200 Watt Studio says, Nick, explain to her why Lemoyne's voice is the way it is and why you mock him. Also, she is too good for your show. She's beautiful, well-spoken, intelligent, not drunk, and most of all, normal. She deserves better, frankly.
Oh, thank you.
Spot the lie. Somebody find the lie in that chat. I don't know. So Lemoyne is a guy named J. Sean Lemoyne. He's a lawyer down in Texas. And I can't tell if he doesn't like me or if he really likes me too much. One of those two is true. But he was opposing counsel in a lawsuit that I was covering regarding Vic Mignogna. And he talks like that because he got West Nile virus and it killed one of his lungs. So he doesn't have the lung capacity and he sounds like a gurgly weirdo. That's not why I make fun of him, though. I make fun of him because he's a giant pile of trash. And there's a big difference between being a gurgly weirdo and a giant pile of garbage who also happens to be a gurgly weirdo. So, yeah, he filed this is super weird. In the lawsuit, he filed a notice of intent to depose me because I was talking about the lawsuit. So it was a notice of intent to file a deposition. And I'll tell you exactly why he did it. It's because it had because of various protections. That was my former home address on it. And so he filed that because he was mad that other people in that lawsuit got doxxed. I didn't dox anybody, but so he was trying to get that on you. Right. Because they never actually noticed me for deposition, which would have been funny. They didn't do that though. They just sent the notice of intent to depose, and then that got quashed.
Yeah, that's a little dirty. That's a little dirty.
Right. And then they freaked out that the lawyer representing Vic would quash the notice quash the notice of intent to notice. It was the weirdest thing. I don't know why he's noticing of intent to notice. But they quashed that, and then they freaked out about that. Like that was some big thing. It was like, but in Texas, you have basically a 3-day window. You can make a motion to quash, and it's any notice of deposition or whatever is automatically quashed, and then they have to fight back as long as you do it within 3 days. It's a strange rule. It's a Texas rule. All of them are strange, but anyway, so yeah, he's probably one of the bigger fans of the show. He's probably watched too much of it. So
yeah, I mean, there is such a thing as hate following, right?
Oh yeah, I know. I'm very familiar. Do you get good haters? Have you gotten any really good haters yet?
I have. I mean, no one that has gone so far as doxing me. I've gotten a lot of weird comments, especially on
this stream. No.
Well, I mean, I have seen some comments on my second screen here, but
not recommended.
No, but I it's nothing that I actually haven't seen before in a weird way. With other video comments that I've gotten, like people either on the laudatory side,
Right.
overly flowery laudatory side, or on the you're an idiot, obviously, because you're a woman and you're blonde. You're not a real lawyer.
Aw, that's rude.
No,
That's
it's fine
rude.
though. It's just keyboard warriors. It doesn't mean anything.
I know tons of brunette lawyer. Wait, no, I'm just kidding. No, and that's when I get forever is the fake lawyer, and then people are like, no, just look up the license, and then it's like, oh, anybody can be a lawyer. It's like, yeah, anybody can. It's terrible.
Kind of, yeah. It's definitely possible. If you can pass a bar exam somewhere, you can get licensed.
Right. And I did, and many people are mad about that. But no, so I wish you many good hate followers in the future. It's always
thank you.
It's as you move through different subjects, somebody really likes the thing that you gave a neutral opinion on, and that is it. You're done at that point. They're like, oh, this person's dead to me.
Ugh. Yeah.
I can't. But no, I haven't really been doxxed either. Like I said, it was my old address that they were trying to get,
Dox
but but I had moved and I protected my new address a little bit better. But,
that's good. That's good.
It's hard to do, right? Like you have to have the only way to eventually avoid it is to basically be totally anonymous. At some point, someone's going to put in the time.
Yeah.
But that being said, Lemoyne. Oh, that lovable little strange lawyer that he is. Oh, goodness. Okay. Let me, I wanted to go back to something that you were talking about earlier. I do this. I bounce back and forth between every subject I can think of. And I can't think of it now. Dang it. What was it? I don't know. We'll have to talk about something else. Okay, so Dr. Disrespect, I think we've basically put a nail in that one. Yeah. We have to wait till documents come out. The Phantoml0rd thing I find to be really interesting just because I like seeing it. Oh, this is funny. I don't know if you'll find it funny, but I do. And that's what matters, I guess. So on Twitter the other day, this guy Copper Cab, he's an old artifact of YouTube. And his channel was completely deleted the other day because of
I saw that.
Right. And so I retweeted it and I said, hey, YouTube, we're your partners. Stop treating us like garbage. And then this guy comes out and he's like, no, partnership's a specific legal term and all this stuff. It's what's your opinion on that? Are we partners with YouTube or not? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes people just want to fight because they want to fight, whether or not they're correct or whether they've read the tweet correctly or not. But I think that my impression on that, because I went through that and I was like, this is a very odd thing to argue about, but
I told you I have good hate followers.
Yeah, of course. But so the argument about the term partnership and whether we are partners. Yeah, I mean, we're part of the YouTube partnership program. We are referred to as YouTube partners because, when you are in some form of a monetization agreement with them, that's what YouTube refers to it as. That's not something that we are, creating a specific entity with YouTube, like a corporate partnership. That's not what you meant by that. I understood that.
No. And that was the weird other thing is when I pointed out that that's a YouTube call and he's like, well, have fun getting all of that back money. And then I was like, wait a minute. Okay. So let's step into your shoes. Do you believe that when a corporation or a general partnership adds another partner, that partner is entitled to the back profits prior to their, because that's what he seemed to imply too. It's very weird. I don't understand these people. But this is just how the internet goes. I just found it mildly amusing. To run across, because I get this stuff all the time. And
Yeah, I've seen some of your arguments with people on Twitter, and you know, when you screenshot some of the comments from people on videos, and I get a kick out of it because you get some very, very interesting people. And I mean, yeah, it's every time I'm like, strange hill to die on, but okay.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's got one, I guess.
Yeah, that's always, it's like, why are you arguing over this? Like Arnold Schwarzenegger could kick your ass. Like, oh, okay. I'm sure the 75-year-old celebrity is really interested in beating up some random guy from the internet, but all right. You live in that world.
Like, you know, whether or not he can is one question. Whether or not he has any interest is another.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I've never tested it out. Arnold and I should fight. I think that'd be good. Felipe Mouve says, hey, Nick, question. For how long have you had the word anathema written on your desk to try and impress a lady? By the way, your camera lens when outdoors makes it look like you are living in King Kaio's planet from Dragon Ball. Yeah, that's this new phone I got. It's got a really nice front camera. The Galaxy.
So you've been recording on your phone?
On my videos that I do outside, I do.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's got a 40 megapixel front facing camera, and it does really well. What camera do you have, by the way? Because your camera is really nice. I can tell.
Thank
you don't have just a garbage webcam.
Yeah, no, I use a Sony A6400. Okay. I have it hooked up through a connection. But for a long time, I like the USB gizmo, whatever it's called. I'm not very well versed in tech. I
got a cam link.
Yeah. Well, I actually got a cam link first, but it was not working for a number of months. I think it was just faulty, which sucks because those are expensive. So yeah. I ultimately got off of Amazon like a way cheaper version of it, and it's working just fine. So go figure.
There you go. My cam link keeps locking up lately, where like it'll work, and then if I start like a game on Twitch, it'll freeze up. Or if I like shut down my OBS and bring it back up, it won't be functioning. I'll have to unplug it and plug it back in. I'm like, I don't want to buy another one of these stupid things. Cause yeah, they're like $120.
Yeah.
What a waste.
Yeah. My recommendation would be to go with a cheaper option off of Amazon. So far it's worked for me.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'll see how much my tax write-off needs to be.
That's also a good call.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about, should we talk about this teacher?
Ooh, sorry. That was the two. Hey, Andy. Sorry.
Was that the dog chasing the cat?
Well, that was probably the kitten coming in to use the litter box, and the dog realizing that the kitten got, because we also have a kitten here that you haven't seen. That's the one animal that has not shown up. But she, yeah. So the dog and the kitten have not yet become best of friends, mostly because the kitten is just terrified of the dog, and the dog is just excited about the kitten. So it's like just a vicious cycle that they so far have not. Yeah. Anyway. So she probably showed up not realizing that the dog was here, and then the dog saw her, I think. So.
I thought there was an earthquake because like it moved your camera and stuff. It was crazy.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? It's totally off focus, or it's
yeah, it got shifted around.
Oh, hang on. Let me stop the camera real quick. I'm still going to be on
yeah,
audio,
no, that's fine.
I'll fix this because I don't want to show everybody my self up front.
Right.
While I fix it.
No, I got
know what the comments are.
You made the right choice.
There we go. That's better.
Okay, so in the background, you have a Nintendo Switch, like sitting upright on display. Is that yours or your husband's Switch? Because you said
it's mine. It's mine. Yours. Yeah, he actually that was a gift for my 30th birthday. That's my first console that I've ever personally owned, because my brothers had like Nintendo 64 growing up. They had I was always the backseat video game watcher. Like I always loved watching them play, unless we were playing Nintendo 64 games like Mario Kart or 007.
Mario Party. Okay, yeah, I got it. So wait, so no wonder you covered Twitch right away. You've been watching people play video games forever.
Yeah, and then when we grew up, then for a while there was just a nice long gap. But my husband is such a big gamer that that's how I got into The Last of Us, was that he was like, when The Last of Us Part 2 was going to be coming out, he was like, hey, I played this game like 5 or 6 years ago or whenever, and he's like, but I want to play it again because the next game is going to be coming out sometime soonish. And he's like, and it's zombies, and I don't really feel like sitting in a room by myself with zombies, so I would like to have another person with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he made you watch the entire Last of Us playthrough?
Yeah, but it's totally it's a narrative though. Like it's actually very, very engaging. At first I was like, oh, no, this is going to be boring, but it totally pulled me in.
Yeah, it's like a movie with button presses is what I've heard.
It is. I mean, yeah, it is, but it is still very, very active and engaging and whatnot. But then since then, I've started to play some games on my own again too. So like he recently got It Takes Two, which is like by nature it's a 2-player game.
Yeah.
Like the premise of it is like you have like a spouse or a couple that's married, that they're planning on going through a divorce, and their daughter like wishes that they could be friends again, so it turns them into these 2 little dolls, and they're like required to work together to get back to their like normal life.
You said It Takes Two. My brain heard Army of Two, which is a completely different 2-person game than It Takes Two. Okay, got it. Yeah. I'm here, I'm like they're out there committing crimes and shooting up a bunch of stuff. This is good. I'm with it. Okay, so you've been playing It Takes Two. What other games do you like? What do you play when he's not joining you?
When he's not joining me, I mean, I've played some Switch games like what's it called? I'm totally brain farting right now.
Animal Crossing.
Link.
Oh, no, Zelda.
Zelda. Yes, Zelda. Which actually, like, he actually stopped playing after a period of time, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you have to finish the game. Like, why are you just going to let it go? But he's one of those guys that he starts to play a game and then he moves on to another one. But since then I haven't played too many games really on my own recently. But
who's your main in Smash Brothers?
Link.
Okay.
And my husband is he doesn't really like to play with me anymore because I tend to win.
Who does he play though when he does? Who's his main?
Samus, actually.
Okay, so you play a guy and he plays a girl.
Yeah.
All right. I play Ganondorf because I used to play Captain Falcon forever. In Smash Brothers when it came out. My buddy is actually the first world champion of Super Smash Brothers officially.
Wow.
It was not impressive. They're like, it happened at the Mall of America Rotunda. There's like 12 people there, but he ended up winning. It was great. I got 4th place. I was so pissed because I'm not in the book, but I always played Captain Falcon. And then now I'm old, and I try to play Captain Falcon on Switch, and if he runs, he's so fast, I just run off the end of the screen and die constantly. So I had to switch to Ganondorf, which is basically Falcon if he was like crossbred with Slowbro Rodriguez or whatever. So
yeah.
Anyway, well, let's see. We were gonna maybe talk about this teacher, right?
Yeah.
Have you been following the story? Did you watch like the video at all? The interview.
I saw like I came across an article about it where the guy, I know the basic highlights of it, not necessarily the like the specifics of it, but I understand that this is a guy that he basically was on camera saying that he has 180 days to radicalize his students, and he's got like Antifa, stuff on the wall and whatnot behind him. So
yeah, he has like he has an Antifa flag. He has a pride flag, which probably isn't really out of place in his Sacramento classroom. Right. He has a Mao poster on the wall. He has some other stuff too. The thing that made me the most like that was most alarming to me. He has one of the political ideological grids, right? The grid, and you have like authoritarian, libertarian, and then left and right.
Right.
And what he did was he made every kid give him a picture of them. And they had to take one of those "where are you politically" quizzes, and then he tacked their faces onto that grid. And then he said,
"That seems so inappropriate."
Yes, exactly. And because he's overtly left, and he says that he's like, I'm as far left as you can go. Like, he has the Ingsoc from 1984 tattoo on his arm. He has 2 + 2 = 5, and I'm like, you realize that those are the bad guys, I think. But no. So he does that, and then one of the things that he said was, he's like, and we keep track of the tack marks. And we notice how every year they get further and further to the left. So there's like empty tack marks, I guess. But I mean, that to me, it was like that it just has no place in a classroom categorizing kids by these political ideologies, especially because let's be honest, kids are stupid. And they haven't, I say that in the loving way, but they haven't formulated actual complex thoughts on a lot of this stuff, right? They're even in high school, kids are taking out into the world what they're hearing at home, what their parents might believe. And they're not, they're spending time thinking about literally anything that's more important to them than this. And most of them can't vote yet. So I found that to be crazy.
And so many kids are also very impressionable by their peers. So, I mean, you can also just imagine like the kids that don't want to rock the boat, right? There are plenty of those that aren't necessarily going to want to do that. They're just going to say, all right, I'm just going to get along to go along. Obviously, you can literally read the room and see, what this teacher is all about and what his thoughts are on what the correct answer should be. And a lot of these kids they want to get good grades so that they can, get on to the next level and go to college and, move on with their lives. That's a lot of these kids, probably. At least that was the environment that I was in at that age. And so I don't know. I mean, I see a lot of kids just being very impressionable, or at least overtly putting on a certain impression for others so that they can just be in that environment.
And I had no time for any of that when I was in school, because one, you'll find this out about me eventually. I'm a giant jerk, and I always have been. And so like, I didn't really respect my teachers' opinions enough to really care to hear their political opinion. Right. Like, and I think that might be what kept me sane through college. Because I was fairly conservative, always been a Christian or whatever. And so going through college, there are some classes where you become the ideological minority, and that usually doesn't matter unless they bring it into it. But I remember one time I was doing a fundraiser, cause I was a cheerleader. So that's fun in college. And my wife and I were walking around, and we had to sell these stupid tickets, these Hardee's tickets. It costs $1. And they were worth $1 at Hardee's, except they weren't quite worth $1 because you didn't get change. So it was like turning your one universal dollar into $1 that could only be used at one place. It was a terrible fundraiser, and I hated it. And so we're walking around because faculty would buy these things because they pitied people. And this is 2004. And I walked into this one professor's office, and I said, you want to buy some of these stupid things? And he says, well, it depends. Who are you voting for? And I was like, do you want to buy the stupid ticket? I don't want to hear your lecture on. And then he proceeded to lecture me on voting for John Kerry. And I was only going to like get to sell these things. So I just left eventually. It's like, just say no. I don't care if you buy them. I got other people I can talk to, but it's like, I don't think that this has a place overtly in a classroom personally, but I wanted to get your take on, is there a way, though, for teachers to divorce themselves of their core beliefs in these classrooms? Like, can they navigate it, or is it impossible?
I mean, I had plenty of teachers in in elementary school and high school that were able to at least at least uh, up to a certain level separate their own opinions. And I could respect that even when it was apparent that you could kind of tell how they felt, but they didn't make it very obvious and they tried to sort of separate it. Even just having that effort put in, I think, was noticed and appreciated. And I think it also depends on what subject matter we're talking about, right? Because if we have a class that is, humanities based, where the purpose of the class is to talk about philosophy, like I was in high school, I had certain AP classes. I was in the International Baccalaureate program where
oh, come on.
where we talked about humanities, we talked about philosophy, like we had, and the teachers in that class, like we knew where they stood, but they also understood that there were kids in the class that did not think like them. And so they didn't make it very cumbersome for us. And they in fact invited, opinions of all kinds, knowing that this was all like high school seniors are about to go to college, and sort of saying like, look, this is what you need to be able to do, is to debate this kind of stuff so that you can go off to college and have conversations that are difficult. So,
right.
but I also had an AP bio teacher that didn't cover the entire curriculum. So when it came to the advanced placement exam at the end of the year, I got to like one of the big questions at the end, and I was like, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea. And I'm pretty sure I literally wrote on this, like, I don't know. My AP bio teacher just spent way too much time ranting about the Iraq War. I don't know what this is. I'm sorry.
A keen biology
my independent
subject
study did not. What's that?
A keen biology subject, the Iraq War.
Yeah, of course. So I was like, I don't know, maybe we would have gotten to it if we hadn't spent so much time on all that stuff. But unfortunately, we didn't. And then, yeah. So somehow I still passed that exam. I don't know.
How many AP classes did you take?
I can't remember, but I know that I had enough credits going into college that I was able to be like a halfway through sophomore year with my units that I started off with, because I took enough of those damn tests.
How long have you been an overachiever in your life?
I don't know. It probably comes with being the youngest of a lot of siblings. Just like seeing a bunch of older siblings that people, that they're always like, no, I can run faster than you. No, I'm smarter than you. And then, you're like, I'll show you. So you have to work twice as hard. But
right. And also all your older siblings don't like you because your parents like you so much. Because you're like, oh God, you're the last one. You're so easy to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, that's also part of it, I think, too.
Yeah, because when parents start out, they're all idealistic. They're like, oh, no, I'm going to raise this one right. And you're going to have like rules and stuff. And by the time you get to the last one, you're like, oh, God, just do whatever you want. Leave me alone. And and you can almost do no wrong. I say this again with 5 children, knowing that all of my children will hate the 5th one. because she's a little angel who runs around and can never get in trouble, and all of the other kids will get in trouble all the time. So no, that's great. I was a good student until 4th grade. Then that's when that whole thing just shut down. I remember getting I was thinking I was going to get in trouble in 2nd grade because I got a B. Right. I got a B plus. It was a 92%. I went to a nasty, strict private school for 1 year, and I had a 92% B plus in science, of all things. And then here, we'll put this. Let's just bring the trauma. This is trauma hour.
Let's do it. Let's go through it.
So then I'm at the Science Museum on a field trip, and I love the Houston Science Museum. It was great. They had big dinosaur skeletons and stuff. It's so cool. Nice. And I would always go there. And so I had been there like a million times. So I was acting as like a little mini 2nd grade jerk tour guide, telling all my friends about all the different stuff. And I think it was my mom was a chaperone on this thing. And one of the kids said, "Hey, your son's really good at science." And I think it was my mom. It might have been my dad. Whichever one said it will probably be mad that I said, or didn't say it will be mad. But they said, "Then why'd he get a B?"
Oh,
They were not,
oh no.
it was funny because they were not harsh, like on grades or anything.
Yeah.
For my entire life. But it was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, thanks. Thank you.
Oh
Just
no.
stick the knife into my heart.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, see, we moved to Minnesota while I was in 4th grade. That's why I stopped
Okay.
liking school, because I
Okay.
started on Texas timeline, which starts school like in August.
Okay.
But in Minnesota, they don't start until the day after Labor Day, or they didn't back then. And
Yeah.
so I didn't get done with school until in
June.
mid-June the next
That
year.
was us
So
as well.
God, it's the longest year of my entire life. God, it was awful. And then I hated school ever since. And I will
Oh,
never
no.
go back to not hating school. But I thought, so Andy No has been reporting on this. I figured I'd bring it up and we could take a look at it.
Yeah.
So let me share this. Here we go. Oh, wait, there it is. So he has, this is 7 hours ago, but it updates as we go down. So he has Natomas Unified School District, the district that employs Antifa member Gabriel Gipe, has announced he has been placed on paid leave and that they'll take steps to fire him. He has recorded an undercover video admitting he indoctrinates students using fear and sends them to direct actions. I don't want to pull up each of these. Oh, wait, let's pull up this. So this is this little refrigerator, the same amount of drinks for each student. But yeah, so he has the Antifa flag. Now, I think, if you have the Antifa flag, but you also have like the Gadsden flag or whatever, and you can, because he did teach AP government. So there is some subject matter crossover here.
Yeah.
But I think you could do it, but he was so unabashedly pro one side. I think that's the big issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, I could understand if he's presenting it in a way that's, along with a bunch of different groups and a bunch of different ideologies so that kids can learn about them and analyze them and come to their own conclusions. I definitely can understand that. That's kind of what I try to do on my channel, generally speaking. A lot of my videos, I usually try to leave the conclusion up to the viewer after presenting the information, right? And
very
here's
lawyerly.
The law, here are the facts.
Yeah.
So but if I were to be queen of the world, this is probably what I would want teachers to do. Generally speaking, is to present everything and to say, hey, up depending on different age ranges, right? Because what kids at a certain age can understand certain things, and then they can understand more as they get older. Usually, hopefully, we hope, right?
Right.
But yeah, but that's interesting.
Now, there's I see a little indignation in the chat, and this is about the paid leave aspect of it, but. For the chat, for the benefit of those who are enraged about that, this is a government job, and this involves speech. And so there's a long line of cases that suggest that you can't, the government removing someone from employment over their speech is touchy. It's touchy. And technically, if they're doing that speech in the course of their employment, they can be removed. They don't have free speech protections, but the question is whether his speech is within the scope of employment or outside of the scope of employment, because outside of the scope of employment, you actually do have free speech as a government employee, and they can't fire you based solely on the content of your speech unless they pass strict scrutiny and all that stuff. So that's why he's on paid leave at this point, is that because this involves speech and that's a touchy subject with any government job, they're going to have to make sure he gets due process. He'll be given notice and an opportunity to be heard on his firing, and he'll have the opportunity to speak on his behalf. And that's just part of since it's a government job, he's entitled to that under the First Amendment. So that's why.
Yeah. And the likelihood of this falling within the scope of his employment is pretty high.
Right. Right. Yeah. But they're going to have to make sure that it does. But yeah, if you're teaching an AP government class and giving extra credit points for telling kids to go visit their communist overlords and hand them water or whatever, then like that's the weird thing to me. That was the other thing he was doing is he was giving them rallies to go to, and they're all like Antifa rallies, and then he's giving them extra credit to go do this because he's like, but because they wouldn't go otherwise. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that extra credit for going to a ideological rally is the right thing. Unless, of course, you open it up and say any political rally you want to go to, go and observe. But that didn't.
Well, and also, I mean, another concern, I mean, just from a legal perspective is, I mean, a lot of these get pretty heated, a lot of these Antifa rallies, right? I mean, because there's protesters and there's counter protesters that if kids get caught up in the mix, some of them sometimes turn violent. And if it turns out that a kid is only there because the teacher instructed them for a class assignment, I'd be concerned about liability for those injuries.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? And that's actually covered in just a second. So he says, following their investigation into Gabriel Geip, the Natomas Unified School District found numerous other violations of district policy. They uncovered he was using rubber stamps featuring positive depictions of Stalin, Castro, Kim Jong-un, and others to mark student work as complete. You know, if you really want to show a positive leader, Kim Jong-un is one of my go-tos.
Yeah, I don't. That one in particular is interesting because that's not exactly like that's kind of a. It's not like he's a very liberal. I don't know. I understand it's kind of hip and vogue for people to be like, yeah, you know, Castro, Stalin, Lenin, that kind of stuff. But like Kim Jong-un.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Cause there's lots of weird Castro simps who are like, I know he killed a bunch of the gays, but he also did the communism that I liked or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how they rationalize it. Like, the Castro regime was horrifying in so many ways, but there are a lot of people who will apologize for it. Stalin too, again, baffling to me, but there's at least a crew of people who say, no, this, you know, there were some unfortunate killings. And that's one of the things he said about Mao and China. He's like, you know, there was probably some people who were shot in the street that shouldn't have been. Okay.
Oh my God. I mean,
but to go with Kim Jong-un is like, I mean, he executed one of his uncles by drawing an X in the sand and making him stand there where they launched a mortar that landed on him. Like that's next level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then he has some of the far left direct actions he gave students classroom credit for. Attending involved activities that became unsafe. He and his wife were at the Sacramento Capitol Antifa riot in 2016, which multiple people were stabbed. Now, this is an interesting juxtaposition by Andy No, because it doesn't say that he sent students to this Capitol Antifa riot, right? Like, but they did say that he sent some students to some activities that became unsafe. We've discovered that some of the materials that were on the wall were added at the earliest May of 2021. And he's saying that needs clarification because the 2019 student video of him shows much of the same material in the classroom, including the Mao portrait. So this is just a wild story. But for me, my position on this is simple. Get kids out of public schools. That's what I think is the right answer for people who are concerned about this stuff. Because I don't think you're going to control the system at the end of the day. I think it's too bloated. And well, frankly, I think a lot of people in the system agree with this guy. But that's me. I don't know. Where are you on homeschooling?
I don't know. I mean, it's a question that I haven't personally had to broach just yet. But I have teachers in my family, like one of my sisters-in-law. She's been a teacher for a lot of years, and she's got all of her own gripes of being a teacher in the system. It's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. No. You know, no matter how you slice it, really, it's just it's a I don't know. It's not a very workable system.
What's her top 3 communist dictators?
None in our family. We are refugees from the Soviet Union. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you're not huge Stalin fans at that point.
No.
Then.
I mean, in fact, I mean, my grandparents and great grandparents, I'm quite certain were on a list to go to Siberia. So they were, if they hadn't gotten out, they would have very much been sent, because they were, yeah, they left behind a very good life. My great grandfather was a professor. He was a dean of the university in Vilnius. He was involved in the government, signed the Declaration of Independence for Lithuania in 1918, like all that kind of fun stuff. So,
wow.
So we've got a pretty big fiery passion on that subject that I generally, I don't talk about too much, but every once in a while it comes out. So if I were a student in his classroom, that would have been, I don't know that I would have gotten a very good grade in that class, because I probably would have been educating everyone on the history of Lithuania quite a bit. I would have taken that opportunity.
That's fantastic. It's I hear Siberia is nice in the summer or whatever.
Yeah, I guess so. We have some more distant cousins that actually did go to Siberia, lived to talk about it. And they were telling us about how when they were kids, like their job was to go and pick berries, and they were expressly told to stay away from polar bears because that was a legitimate concern.
You wouldn't want to try and take the polar bear's berries. Bad idea.
Yeah. And I do have my mom's paternal grandfather is still buried in Siberia, unfortunately. So, there's a lot of those there too. So,
are you familiar with Polly the polar bear?
No.
Okay, good. It's an ill-fated children's show on YouTube. Don't ever look it up.
Oh no. Okay.
It was not a good thing.
I will trust you on that based on the other educational pieces I've gotten today.
Oh man. Oh my goodness. Okay, I do have a question for you. Do you have any lawyer heroes? Like, are there any like historical or whatever lawyers that you look up to? I'm just curious, trying to get to know the legal mind of LegalBytes.
I mean, one of my favorite lawyer stories actually is there is an attorney in Texas, and I'm totally brain farting his name right now. It's gonna escape me for a while. But he actually was able to smooth talk his way into the law school. Like, he never actually applied to the University of Texas. He never applied. He just started going to classes. And eventually he took enough classes that the university was like, all right, we'll give you a degree. And then he ended up becoming a massive litigator in Texas. That's one of my favorite stories, because it's very Clueless, like the movie Clueless. You know how Cher, she's just able to like negotiate her way into higher grades. Like it's very much like that, and I really appreciate it, because it's something that I don't know that I could actually like do that myself. Like, I don't know that I have the gumption for it, but I can appreciate it when I see it.
Yeah, it's something that we all just assume shouldn't be possible. So you never, it was like that movie Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah. It's very similar to that, but it was also way before there was a U.S. News and World Report ranking system, I think, like a very, very long time ago.
Yeah, but it's like those stories sometimes happen. And it's always interesting when they do. Okay, that's interesting. Well, I've got a bunch of super chats to read.
Okay.
And so here's what I always do, especially with a new guest. You're welcome to stay through the super chats and answer and address any of them as you want, or you are welcome to not stay if you have to go, because it's 1:15 in the morning. But
I'm okay to hang out for a bit.
Okay. So here we go. Oh, damn it. All right. This is from that one guy. This is 3 in a row, and we're going to read them. This is in reference to the end of the show yesterday.
Okay.
So bear with me. He says, so that thing I mentioned, oh wait, no, it's maybe it's not. So that thing I mentioned about Hitler the other night, that was from Hitler's First War by Thomas Weber. Hitler opportunistically helped the Soviet uprising in Bavaria, but disavowed it after it failed. Okay, no, so this isn't about yesterday. Never mind. That's completely different. He says, also, I find the idea that Hitler truly hated Soviet ideology to be laughable. They kept the Nazi flag red as a nod to communists. The intellectuals of the Nazi movement considered them fellow travelers since they were both Marxist movements. And then he says, do you think educating people is going to change or improve the system in some way over time? You need a moderate IQ to navigate the legal system, and all you can really do is hire a lawyer. Nothing other than eventual reform is going to change that. So that's actually a very interesting question. The Hitler Nazi stuff. Yeah, I mean, they were the National Socialist Party. They have Marxist roots. I don't know that anybody here and in the chat is going to disagree with that, but that's nice history. Thank you. But I do think the question of the legal system and its reform, we talked about how expensive it is to access. What do you think are the steps on this? What happens?
Well, so I'm really interested in some of the other legal tech projects that are out there, because there are companies that are actually aimed directly at clients or would be clients of a law firm. Like one example that I love bringing up pretty much everywhere is Hello Divorce. It's a platform for people going through a divorce so that they can, as inexpensively as possible, because it's obviously already a horrible situation to be going through.
Yep.
And you add expensive lawyers into the mix, and it's just terrible. So they've managed to create like this program, this platform where for the most part you're working your way through it, you and the opposing side, and then when you get caught up in a snag, they link you up with other attorneys that are kind of on call that can kind of help sort of inform you, and they've sort of made it so that it is a little bit more user friendly, so that people can actually work their way through it as inexpensively as possible. So I think that there are solutions out there that people are working for. And hopefully that these are the kinds of things that can continue to grow and sort of fill this big gap that exists for most people, that are needing legal services.
Yeah, I've only done 2 divorces or assisted on 2 divorces. I didn't do them the whole way, and I told them the only way I participated in those was Minnesota allows dual representation so long as both parties agree. So you represent both parties in helping them navigate the legal questions. But if they come to a dispute, you have to pull yourself out and they have to get their own attorneys. So those are the only things I've ever done. And it sounds like it's a system like that. And then when they get to a dispute, they have independent counsel that can then, but I'm curious how they get around like the ethical implications of like the firm professional responsibility rules of like segregating the lawyers out. Maybe if they're just of counsel and they don't have access to the centralized system.
I don't know the specifics on that. If you can have just one person using, I'm assuming you can probably have just one person using their program and then somebody else has their own attorney if they want or something. Sure. Or you can have 2 people kind of in tandem with their own sort of accounts, I guess. And I think that at the end is where they end up like having an actual attorney sort of assigned to you. I think I'm not, sure. I may be misrepresenting this. I hope I'm not, but
no, I hope you are. I hope you are. It'll make an interesting lawsuit to cover on the channel. Hello, Divorce News LegalBytes for defamation.
Lies, all of it. But there's also a lot of talk about law firms kind of changing their cost structure too. Like there are some practice areas that probably could change to a subscription service, which I think is such an interesting concept, because on the one hand, if you have a subscription service for a period of time, let's say you're an employment law firm and you represent companies, as defense, you probably counsel them over time for a lot of different questions that they have. And having a subscription service could help that, in the months when they're not really asking you much of anything, but you're just, they know that you're there, and that's a security that they have. You're still getting paid for that. And then, some months you might have a little bit heavier workload, but it kind of, balances out possibly.
Right.
So that's another really interesting. And then it's more cost effective for the clients too.
I think what I find interesting is, so we're graduating so many more lawyers per year than are dying or retiring, which is a sad thing, because more lawyers need to die every year. That needs to happen. They're just bad people. So there's two ways in which the market can absorb the amount of lawyers, and it's either through expanded practice. And we see that with I think as this keeps happening, we start to see more and more like odd legal theories making their way into lawsuits that probably shouldn't exist. But the other way is a reduction in price overall, because there's just more lawyers around, and they have to absorb the amount of business that's there if they keep choosing to practice. And so I think we may see a relaxing of the legal system price in the future just by market forces.
Well, I don't know that I completely agree with that, though, because at the same time, law school costs are also going up. So in order to accept a job, new lawyers need to be able to pay off their student debt, because otherwise, how is that ever going to happen?
Yeah, that's true. So, and law school prices shouldn't be going up. They should be going down for what they actually are teaching these kids. They should be going down, in my humble opinion. It's man, when I passed the bar on my first take, and I was from, at the time, the lowest passing bar class that had ever existed, until the next semester's bar class tried, and they were even worse. And then I'm pretty sure it got worse after that. And I'm like, what are law schools even doing? They're not teaching kids how to pass the bar. And we know anybody who gets out of law school and tries to practice, as we discussed earlier, they're not teaching kids how to practice. So what are they actually doing? Rigsby says, I've lost 20 more pounds since I saw you at Matsuri, making the total in the last 10 months 190 pounds. Oh,
that's insane. Goodness. That's amazing.
I'm officially back in the hundreds. I haven't been this weight since I was 18, which was 10 plus years ago. I've got about 30 more pounds to lose to be ideal. Keep getting it, brother. He also says, last 4 weeks have been rough. I've had the same 3 surgeries 3 times in 14 days, all of them hemorrhoidectomies. Pro tip, don't ever let an urgent care operate on you unless it's literally to save your life. All medical pros are appalled they did it in office. Damn. That was a lot of information that I didn't want to know about your hemorrhoids. But that being said, thanks for the pro tip. Sorry to hear that, buddy. Keep on keeping on. Critical Austrian theory says in Arnold voice, God damn it, fuck your freedoms. You don't have the freedom to spread an infection without consequence. Not unless it's AIDS. We withdrew penalties on that one. Yes. Yeah, very interesting to say for Arnold to suggest that accidentally spreading a virus that's transmitted airborne is somehow you have more liability for that than intentionally spreading an autoimmune deficiency that only is transmitted through blood, but they decriminalized that one. So what do you think about this with the I know I don't want to talk about vaccines and stuff in general, but the idea of liability for the transmission of a communicable disease, like especially one that's like, well, let's use the flu as a safe YouTube way to talk about it, because it's similarly transmitted, right? And so, I mean, this is what is blowing my mind on all of this COVID stuff, is that the flu exists and is transmitted in the same way, and for certain demographics can be very, very deadly. But I'm not aware of any liability being held for someone who goes into a grocery store and sneezes, and then some elderly person dies. Are you aware of that ever being a thing?
No, I mean, especially because, I mean, if you're going to prove any kind of liability for something like that, causation is going to be one of the biggest issues there, because there are so many things that can cause someone to die from a certain illness, right? And
Right.
number one, you have to prove that they actually got it from that specific person and not someone else. Number two, you have to show that well, I mean, I guess there is the eggshell skull rule, right? That you take your victim as they come. That they could be the weakest person ever and on their deathbed, and if you're responsible for killing them, you're responsible for that.
Now this is gonna be a dumb question from me, but is the eggshell skull rule applicable in negligence cases? I mean, I guess it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get roasted for that one, but that's good. So yeah, I mean, I guess you do take your victims as you get them, but I've never seen a duty of care that requires the non-transmission of a disease.
Right.
And so that's the problem with negligence, is that negligence is duty, breach, causation, damages.
Yeah.
And
do you have a duty to not spread a disease? So then where does that go? You have a duty to wash your hands 5,000 times a day. You have a duty to, live in a bubble. You have there are so many, that extension can go very, very far.
Yeah, so exactly.
Where does that where are the boundaries of that duty?
For people who are asking about the eggshell skull rule, just really briefly, what it is let's say, you do something, you shove someone, right? You shove a kid, like a kid I went to elementary school with. When he came to the school, actually, before he joined the school, we got an all school lecture because he had some particular disabilities that meant that he was particularly fragile. He had something where if he was shoved or shaken, he was like susceptible to die because of some sort of issue with his neck. And the kid was a complete asshole. Which, I like him. He's a funny kid, but he was a complete asshole because no one could do anything to him. You couldn't go clock this kid. But so the idea was if you shove someone and it normally wouldn't kill them, but I mean, you did shove them and this person happens to die because of an underlying condition, just because you didn't know that doesn't mean it's okay. You're actually still liable under civil law, at least, for the full amount of damage that your action caused, whether or not the action should have caused that. And that's a pretty good rule, because if you punch someone and they fall down and they die hitting their skull in the concrete and you shouldn't have punched them, you don't have a justification, then, that is your fault. You caused their death. So
now the other, another point that can be added to the conversation there also is that there's such a thing as contributory negligence, right? So if the person who got injured was doing something particularly risky themselves, that doesn't necessarily serve as a bar to liability, but that can reduce the amount that they can get in damages. Because you say, in a car accident, the plaintiff was not wearing a seatbelt. Well, if that resulted in more injuries because they were doing something that was not safe, then that's something that can reduce the amount that they get in damages from the other side.
And that's the amazing part of how this works out, and why the illness, why the communicable disease question is so hard. Because anybody who's ever had an insurance claim or a lawsuit involving someone else crashing into their parked car knows that they're like 10% liable because they decided to park their car there. It's like you somehow contributed to the accident of someone else just by being in the spot that you were in. And so for this, for the transmission of disease, it's such an interesting legal concept, because it's like, wait, okay, so you bring that to thing. It's like, well, they went to the grocery store and they were unvaccinated. It's like, well, you went to the grocery store too, though.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't gone there, like, you're at least 50% at fault at that point, as far because your actions are the exact same. So, it's a weird one.
Because and the question becomes like, well, what were you doing to prevent getting it? Right.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Did you get vaccinated? Did you wear a mask? Did you maintain social distancing from the people around you? What did you do? These are tough questions. And I hope Well, no, I almost hope some ambitious lawyer decides to try and start suing people for coughing in a grocery store. That'll be entertaining at least. Felipe Mouve says, I have 2 words for those that think becoming a lawyer is difficult. Nick Rekieta. Thank you, Felipe. It's beautiful. Scarpy the Strange says, Nazis used to indoctrinate children in schools to rat out their parents as dissidents. Keep that in mind. Also, love how that teacher has a fascist ingsoc symbol in his to own the fascists. Funny that. Yeah, no, that people just, they think 1984 was a how-to guide is really what that is. Vacu Samago says, in Ugandan, why are you late? You busy eat the poo-poo. Come on now. Stop it. Noirs. We watched a video the other day. It was from like 2011, and it was a Ugandan politician advocating against homosexual marriage in Uganda with like this. Boy. It was really funny. It was way out there. It was great. Noir777 says Alita's last name is obviously Battle Angel. There you go. You've been doxxed. Did you watch that movie?
I did, actually. That was that. I saw that in theaters with my dad, and it was really funny because that's the first time that I've ever heard my name like pronounced in like something as big as a movie, and it was just it was wild. I've never had that before, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it. I thought it was a good flick. Okay, yeah. But someone just said contraindicated in the chat, and now I'm thinking, did you see the Cook County family law case where the mom, her right to see her child was removed because she was unvaccinated?
Yeah.
And then that's been the judge reversed himself and then recused himself after that.
Yeah. Yeah, that I didn't see the details about it, but I did see that it was ultimately reversed. And that is the thing that I have that I worry about from a legal perspective with all of these vaccine mandates that don't have any sort of exceptions to them is that there are people that have also been, I don't know if this was the case for this woman, but there are people out there that have been told by their doctors, it is still unsafe for you to get the vaccine. Like, yeah, you have medical conditions that I do not want you to get one yet. And that is potentially disability discrimination against these people for saying you are not allowed to coexist in public life until you get the vaccine. But you have to, but your doctor says that you're, at some sort of a risk for it.
Yeah, her doctor had said that she should hold off on getting it because she'd had allergic reactions to other vaccinations. And so he said, for now, hold off on getting it. And so then she didn't get it. And this judge, the other interesting thing is this issue was brought up sua sponte. The father did not raise this issue, although like a true warrior, he decided to then now he's petitioning to have it reinstated. He didn't bring up the issue, and the judge had said that she couldn't see the kid until she got vaccinated. Now the dad is asking the court to do that again, even though he didn't initially raise it. He did agree with the decision later, which I think is a completely lame move, personally. But that's what he's doing. But yeah, the judge has reversed it and recused himself due to social media pressure. So I guess my next question for you, as a social media lawyer and a burgeoning influencer in the media law field, do you feel that social media and should have an impact on courts?
I don't know, because I think I'll give the lawyer's response and say it depends. Because there are some situations where there's a lot of information out there, and we can all kind of come to the conclusion that we want to, because we kind of know the full scope of the facts. Then there are cases where I feel a lot less confident that we know the full picture. Like, Britney Spears is one of those situations. Like, her conservatorship, there are so many more pieces of information that are not publicly available that I think would make a huge difference as to how I personally feel about that case. that I think are just crucial. And I mean, Dr. Disrespect, the most that we can do is really speculate and say, if it's this situation, then I think that should happen, but that's the most that we can really do. But I mean, taking a situation where there are gaps of information and just running with the ball for the end zone, I don't know about that.
See, and so this is where I'll offer a little bit of pushback, and it's mainly in the realm of family court. Because I've been covering a couple of these cases, Michael Long being one, James Younger being another, or Sophie Long, I guess. And then now this Cook County case, you have we'll stick with the Cook County case, because to me, it's more black and white. I think this is an objectively bad decision. I don't think the judge's opinions about the efficacy of a vaccine in this particular, like without a significant amount of evidence provided by medical experts within the scope of this custody agreement is a proper thing. But without the social media outrage, this order would have just stood. And so now you have, and I think the family law system is particularly vulnerable to this because of the best interest of the child standard and the way that gives family law judges extra leeway in ruling in ways that can be problematic. And for me, like, having the transparency of the courts, I think, is critically important. And what I've been seeing coming out of Texas specifically are courts that are making very strange and questionable rulings and then putting gag orders on the cases, on the parties, because quote unquote children are involved. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, if you have free reign over the lives of these children and people's access to the rights to their kids, I think there needs to be public review of this stuff.
Yeah, so I definitely understand needing to maintain some sense of privacy for kids, especially because these days, kids that are growing up in the age of information, where social media is just present everywhere, what kind of privacy are they growing up with? What kind of choices do they even have for their own privacy, before a certain age? So I definitely understand that concern. But yeah, I mean, there also is I understand what you're saying too, is that, when we're talking about possibly breaking up families, these are the kinds of things that give people lifetime trauma. That hopefully you have a good judge that really thinks about the decisions that they're making and the impact that they're having on people's lives for decades, if not further. But sometimes you get judges that get a little burned out on their job and they kind of just want to go and phone it in and then go home. You never know. And they may be very protective of their work and decide that they just don't want people talking about it. So,
or I think 2020 has really brought that out, because a lot of them, they had Zoom hearings that were suddenly publicly available. You didn't have to go to a courthouse to see it, and judges started acting in
easily shareable.
Right. And it got really, really ugly and also hilarious, right? The guy with the buttfucker 3000 name is still one of my favorite.
And the lawyer cat. Don't forget about the lawyer cat.
Oh, wait, you don't know. Hold on. I'll be right back. 2 seconds.
Okay.
So the painting behind me of the whiskey bottles, this guy, the same guy, also painted this. Check this out.
Oh my God. I love it. That is awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. So
my God, I love that. I want that.
Well, it's mine. You can't have it. I bought it at auction.
I will fly to Minnesota and I will steal it from you.
So this guy, he's a great artist. He's a friend of my parents. And so what he does, he'll paint stuff like this, and then he'll just auction it and do charity donations or whatever. So he throws up the auction, and he does it a silent auction. So you just message him with your offer on Facebook or whatever. And then he sends back if you have the high bid or not. And so then and he'll tell you what the high bid is, and you can outbid it. And then, you go. I find out I'm bidding against my mom on this. But I find this out way later. I found out that I outbid my mom. And so I was yelling at her. It's like, why didn't you tell me? I told you guys I was going to buy it. Why were you bidding on it? What are you doing? Oh, she made me mad. So anyway.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I'm not a cat. That was a great moment. Not applicable says LegalBytes. Do you play the Switch and what's your favorite game? We kind of talked about this, but what is your favorite game? Is it Zelda? That's what you said you were playing.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed Humans Fall Flat. I think probably, maybe my favorite, just because I love watching my husband squirm, is probably Smash Brothers on it. Especially because so part of the reason why he got me a Switch was because he got one for himself first, and then specifically for when we travel so that we can play together, on an airplane or whatever. And then he got me one also so that we can, play games together on different consoles. And so it kind of became this tradition that we would go to a restaurant, and for a while I was in California and he was, stationed overseas in Asia. And so we would get together in kind of different parts of the world when we would meet up. So we would be in, some restaurant in the nice part of Hong Kong, and we would set up the Switch on the table while we were waiting for food and playing games together. So that kind of became a tradition. Even if we go to a fancy restaurant where we're okay, are we going to break out the Switch? Let's do it. So,
nice.
So yeah, usually Smash Brothers is probably my favorite one, just because he gets a little angry, and I like to watch that sometimes. I love him.
No, that's good. That's good. ASO says Dr. Disrespect will be transparent like he was with his affair, or like when he filmed in the bathroom at E3 in 2019. Oh, see, that was the spicy one.
Yeah.
We'll see, Robert, the thing is, neither of those are justification for breaking a multi-million-dollar exclusivity deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless they have a clause in there about, certain XYZ can get you kicked off our platform, and you understand that, that could be specifically laid out in the contract. But if it's not.
Now, I think you guys were talking about this the other day when I was listening to the E3 thing. Was a while back, and they had re-signed, and it was already public at the time that he had done that. So it'd be pretty hard to argue a morality clause thing on that when they would have known, or should have known, doing due diligence on a $10 million contract, that this is part of his history. So I'm kind of, it's possible that it's in there, but I think his counter argument, and I don't remember who brought it up on the stream, but his counter argument would be, you take me as you found me. You knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
Robert Corrales says balls or no balls. The declination to answer was earlier. We'll skip that. Vexner 3 says 3 options: blackface picture, show feminist boy video, or claim her as your internet younger sister to shield her from all the degeneracy. She's so pure. The third one. That's what we'll do. 200 Watt Studio says, Nick, WTF, I don't watch your channel to see normal people. LegalBytes is way too normal for this channel, you degenerate. And then balls or no balls, LegalBytes. Sir Guppy says, a few months ago, Dr. Disrespect on stream alluded that he was removed to free up money to bring back Ninja and Shroud. That's been speculation for a long time.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's true. First of all, I don't know that Twitch needed money freed up to bring back.
They are owned by Amazon, so they have unlimited money, it seems.
Right.
Which is also visible in the amount of money that they spent on Phantoml0rd's lawsuit. They hired a lot of high-powered, expensive lawyers, multiple law firms to deal with that case. Pretty nuts. So I would expect the same thing with Dr. Disrespect's lawsuit, which is just when you think about it from a business perspective, that to me just doesn't make sense, because you can either sit down and negotiate a settlement with someone, or you can decide to try to destroy them in a lawsuit, and you end up burning so much cash.
I think the I think the counter argument is that they have enough cash to burn and they're worried about breaking the seal.
Yeah.
If they can, and which, because I was thinking immediately, I'm like, but the Phantoml0rd thing couldn't have been that much money. Like the dollar amounts we're talking about as damages couldn't have been as high. Maybe, I don't know, but they don't seem like they would be as high as a Dr. Disrespect arguing an 8-figure deal.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, why are they spending all this money? And then it's like, wait, if they've never actually lost one of these cases, though, if they win and prevent the floodgates from opening on other creators, they can maintain it. So it might be worth it to try and shut it down as effectively as possible for future suits. That's the only thing I can figure, because otherwise you're right. I mean, it makes a ton more sense. Actually, the thing that makes the most sense for Twitch would have been to immediately resolve this with Dr. Disrespect in the background. Say, look, we can't pay you $10 million or whatever he had. The value of the contract was destroyed immediately. We've got these arguments. You've got arguments. Let's renegotiate the contract, get you back on the platform, and just do business together. That would have been a better deal for them. And I think, if the prospect is you go from $15 million down to $13 million or 10 or whatever, then, but you still get to do business, and maybe they add some upward incentive for him on performance metrics to try and get back, they could actually make a much better deal out of it. So I think, to me, the only thing that makes sense is keeping the floodgates closed.
Yeah. You're probably right.
Wolfgang Deo says, Californian, arms or no arms on your bear.
So you mean like Second Amendment arms?
I think that's what they're saying. Yes.
Are they asking my personal preference, or are they asking factually what is on the California flag?
I think they're asking your personal preference on the right to keep and bear arms.
I've been to a shooting range. I find the pastime fun. So I'm not against the Second Amendment by any means.
All right, perfect. So. Lil Meme says Taliban has a Twitter account, don't they? They do. They do. Yeah. Uncivil Law says LegalBytes for the win.
Hey, Kurt.
Not applicable. It says don't ignore chat. You can do it. Don't ignore chat. You can do it, Nick. Not don't ignore chat. He was telling me to ignore chat. Wolfgang Deo says LegalBytes. Foodies are females with schlongs. Would you rather have balls or no balls on your food? We discussed this earlier. Not applicable. Says, is it over? Can I unmute? Also ask about Veritas. We talked about Veritas. Andrew War Snowboard says, George Lucas had a dog named Indiana that he named Indiana Jones after. The dog also voiced Chewbacca. Did it really? The dog voiced Chewbacca?
I don't know. Maybe some of the
like grunting and stuff.
I guess.
God, there's too much Star Wars lore for me. I hate it. Wolfgang Dio says, LegalBytes, should we try to stop a hurricane with a nuke for science?
I like to ascribe to the saying that science is sorcery and math is magic. So I'm probably not the best person to ask on that on that subject. But my guess, if I had to say something, is it probably would not go over too well.
Yeah. Wait. So are you a victim of lawyer mathematics as well?
Yeah, I try to stay away from math as much as possible. Although I can do a damages calculation like any lawyer.
Yeah. Well, that's because you're getting paid heavily for it. But it's every other part of math where you're like at the grocery store, you're like, this is $7 and that's $8. That's $50 together.
Yeah.
Vienticus Prime says, after I buy something, I get ads for the same thing I just bought. I've even been advertised a book that I wrote. AdSense is a fail. Who buys this crap? Your publisher, apparently. That's who buys the ads. Projects Done Poorly says, Nick, remember when we had a president with full mental capabilities? Pepperidge Farms remembers. Eldon Bainling says, why do all lawyers have the same beige wall paint? What is this conspiracy to have terrible walls? Listen, it was like this when I got here. Why? What's your excuse?
Ditto.
Okay. Look, we don't have time to paint. We got very important YouTube streaming today.
Yeah, of course.
Tina says, Nick simping for LegalBytes. Eldon Bainling says, Nick, where are your cheerleader pom-poms? I already said they're in your mom's shirt, Eldon Bainling. Wait. Oh, there's some. I missed some of these. Stephen Cooper says, Nick, you are a terrible person for subjecting her to this chat. I've never claimed otherwise. Bad Vibe says, duty not to reproduce if you have a genetic disorder. Not even. Nope. There's no duty there. Right. Mandy Caravicius says, hello, Nick and LegalBytes. I made a bunch of chicken taquitos. Wish I could share. Me too.
Aww,
oh my God.
I love chicken taquitos.
Hope your blood pressure is stabilized from last night, Nick. No, it settled down. I'm good. I got all my hate out on Twitch today. So, did you see that Twitch had a walk off of Twitch day today? Like all of the bunch of creators were like taking a day off of Twitch to protest hate raids.
I saw that was planned. I didn't know if that was actually going through.
Well, I did a stream on Twitch in support of hate because I am pro hate. And so no, my blood pressure is good. But you know what made me mad today? I've never really made guac before. And so I was like, oh, I'll buy some avocado, some tomatoes, some onion, jalapeno, and some limes. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to make some homemade guac. This is going to be great. So I go through the process. I make this thing up. I taste it. I'm like, yeah, this is good. And I go to dip a chip in it, and I realize I don't have any chips in my house. Oh, it was the worst.
That is the worst.
I was very, very upset about this.
That's a sad day right there.
Yeah. So now it's just sitting in my refrigerator with nothing to do.
No vehicle.
Exactly.
No vehicle. I mean, you could use a spoon, but I don't know if that's
eating guac with a spoon is weird. Like, I'm not opposed to it, but it is weird. Brian Griswold says in Biden voice, look at the camera and say, I'm white trash and I'm in trouble. Okay. I don't think I do a good Biden voice, but people know it, so it works. Kay Shiloh Williams says, good evening, Nick, and welcome LegalBytes. If you want to cry, check out the Louisiana system Windows to the World, and a 7-point grading scale killed my GPA. Never heard of it, but I also don't cry, so
it's unfortunate.
Sorry for you. Brian Griswold says, has anybody called Gabriel Gipe Gabe Wad yet? Gabe Wad? Maybe. Not applicable says, get subscribed, just won me over, F commies. Oh, yeah. So I guess your story about Lithuania.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Go subscribe. I didn't say it enough. Go subscribe to LegalBytes, guys. Seriously, do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Base Crocodile says, to be honest, the Nazi flag is a graphic design inspiration. Okay. Josiah.
That's a take.
It's a take. We take all takes here. Josiah Fitch says, how do you catch a polar bear? You cut a hole in the ice, placing peas around the hole. So when the bear comes up to take a pee, you kick him in the ice hole. Okay, I got it. Very good. Mick B123 says, hey, Nicky boy, can you get my pillow at the grocery store? I think you can can't you still get my pillows at Walmart? I don't know that they've been pulled from there.
I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't checked. Wolfgang Deo says, when I get sick, I go everywhere so as to help it spread so that it burns out faster. Do I cause people to die? Yes. Hashtag pro hate. Lone Wolf Ranger says, do we bring back dueling? That's the question for you. Do we bring back dueling?
I mean, personally, I would say no. I mean, that's a little bit less of a legal take, I guess, but just maybe a personal preference take, just because it's like, your duels. I mean, duels were primarily to like protect someone's honor, right? And I feel like we don't really need that anymore. I mean, we've got things like OnlyFans. Honor doesn't really need to be protected anymore.
It's true.
I feel like that's just a lot of needless dying, it seems.
Yeah, he says the answer is yes, or you are wrong.
Oh, well, then I guess I'm wrong.
What about mutual combat laws? How are you on mutual combat? So not not dying, right? But like
Mhm.
if two people are like, no, we do want to settle this with fisticuffs, should they be allowed to just beat each other up? Like, is that okay?
Well, I think, it's not an assault if you have consent from the other party, right? Like that's how you have it, like boxing as a sport, right?
Some states will still criminalize it. So I don't think you can have
Huh.
civil assault, but some states
Interesting.
will still criminalize a fight. They'll disorderly conduct both of them. I think that's how it
Oh,
works
that's
out in
true.
Minnesota. They won't give them an assault charge or a battery charge necessarily, but they'll do a disorderly conduct on both of them. I don't
Mhm.
know. I think people should be allowed to fight it out. If you pull a knife or something, I mean, come on, stop it. But otherwise, beat each other up, get into it. I think that would solve some problems personally. Uh,
Probably.
Amateur Ant says, ask her if the pervert and thief, okay, should be impeached over his failure with the Afghan withdrawal. I think he should stay the full term to teach people a lesson. It could be even worse with Heels Up Harris trying to prove she has a functioning brain. Okay, so what do you think about impeachment of Joe Biden, I guess is the question.
Oh boy. Well, I think impeachment is something that gets thrown around a little bit too easily these days, and I think that was the case in the last administration as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, hey, you did something that I didn't like. You should be impeached for it. I think that that's probably something that is a much more serious thing than people nowadays have been talking about it. So I think that regardless of which president we're talking about, the first remedy for them doing things in either enacting a certain policy that you don't like or enacting it in a way that you disagree with. The first remedy should be not reelecting that person, right? I mean,
Right.
that's why we have a democratic system, and impeachment really is for when they are doing something that is against the law, that is, they are going against uh, the, the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. So I think personally, I mean, my opinion is, that the policy as regards Afghanistan, the policy was probably the right choice. I think that's not universally,
Yeah,
but
getting out
overwhelmingly,
of
I think of
Afghanistan is the
20
policy you're
20
talking
years
about.
in, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like the government can either shit or get off the pot, right? Like
Yep.
they're either going to stand or they're going to fall. So, after 20 years, another, however many years after that, can we really say that being there for much longer is going to do that much good? However, you can agree with a certain policy and 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 totally disagree with the way that policy was enacted, or not enacted, but put in place. And I think that that's been the overwhelming criticism, of this whole situation, which I personally agree with. I think that there could have been better ways to strategically move those pieces to get them out, in
Oh
a way
yeah.
that saves lives.
I was reading a thing today. There was a transcript leaked, but a call between Biden and what's the guy's name? The president. Well, he was the president of Afghanistan. Now he's living it up in the Emirates or whatever. Ghazi,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
There's a call between them, and one of the things that stuck out in the article, they mentioned that the U.S. we did airstrikes and broke a peace treaty just right before this call had happened, and the call was in August. And so it's like, or July or something. Yeah, the call was in July. We did the pullout in August, but right before the call, we had done some airstrikes, which violated a peace treaty that we had. It's like, wait a minute. So we didn't pull out in May, back when we were originally going to pull out. We moved it. Well, Biden moves it back, and then we airstrike targets, even though we had a peace treaty. So we violate the treaty, and then now we're surprised that they're like fighting back. We violated the deal. That, to me, like, this type of stuff is going on. And I don't know if you saw,
Yeah.
but a couple of days ago, one of the reporters asked Biden at his press conference about stuff, and then Biden goes into the weirdest rant about how there were no deaths for a year, no American deaths in Afghanistan for a year. And then he's like, because Donald Trump negotiated with the Taliban and for peace. And it was like, yeah, wasn't that good? Like, what, didn't we accomplish the goal there? And then
Yeah.
now we don't have that anymore because the peace treaty is broken. It's so strange. And like,
Yeah.
for me, seeing the violation of the treaty with the airstrikes, I didn't know about that because I don't follow this. I'm not like a foreign affairs reporter, right? Lawyers, we focus inland most of the time.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, and so seeing that, I was like, what? Why did we violate the peace treaty? That doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, that was a long one. 200-watt Studio says, Alita, debate Nick on circumcisions. He loves it. No, stop it. Wolfgang Deo says, LegalBytes, how flat is the earth, or is it shaped like a velociraptor?
Probably a velociraptor. Actually, I would maybe go with a brontosaurus.
Do you believe in the existence of Australia?
I have never been, but I have a friend that lives there. She says she does.
Yeah, that's the better answer. Okay. Now we know. See, guys, have you ever, it's always a friend of a friend. It's always somebody else, right? Like,
yeah, it's true.
Ron Crossman says, who is your favorite Chaos God in Primarch? I don't suppose you know anything about Warhammer 40K.
I do not.
Okay, we'll leave that there. It's over there. Those are like Warhammer books and Space Marines, and then that whole shelf. It's a sci-fi universe. Mandy Carvacia says, do you think Trump would have pushed vaccine mandates if he was still in office? I do. I think he would have. Personally.
Trump, yeah, maybe. It's hard to tell. Because he also has always been very, very sensitive to his base. Right. And I think his base is very much against that, but he did recently. I mean, he was recently at a rally, right? And he got booed for saying that people should get vaccinated, I think.
Yeah. I wonder how it would have played out if he was still in office, though. I wonder if the tune would have changed because his base trusted him. And so he was, the Project Warp Speed was his thing. And so there might have been a level of trust that they had in him that would carry into that mandate. I seem to think that it would have come. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong on it.
I mean, it's so hard to tell because, like we said earlier, a lot of these stances on these issues are different depending on the year or the season between the two parties, right? Because going into the presidential election, Biden and Harris were both saying, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to get the vaccine if it's
would you take a
under
vaccine
this administration."
Yeah,
exactly. They were going around saying that quite a bit, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that. It's easy to forget that now because of so many things that have happened since then. But it's interesting to kind of come back to that and be like, that's interesting. So what would their take have been had Trump won? Maybe more of that. And maybe that drum would have been, getting beaten by the left on that particular subject.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to take the hard position and say he would have done it. But I don't know. Because I do think that Trump had a little bit. This was my initial hesitation with him back in 2016, was that he seemed to have a little bit more authoritarian bent to him than I liked. And that I don't fault him for it. I think, you run a company as a CEO for 30 years and the company is literally your name and your word is gospel, that you're going to carry that. Now, he didn't really manifest a lot of authoritarianism in office. I was actually impressed that he didn't. But this one, I just don't know. So we'll see, or we won't see. We'll never see.
Yeah, I know, right? But the other thing that I think about is I remember he was talking about when this whole thing was sort of starting off. He got a lot of flack from people for talking about how yes, there are lockdowns that are happening that are going to continue to happen. He's like, but I am concerned about the other impacts on people's lives, on people's health later on down the line for locking down. He got a lot of flack for that because people were like, oh, you're not trying to protect against the virus, when I think that they either were just flat out ignoring it or just weren't seeing it, weren't aware of the fact that, there's also other things that happen, like depression, domestic abuse, suicide rates, like that kind of
Right.
stuff, can happen when you just don't have social contact with people because you're social distancing from everyone for months on end. So
It was awful.
So I don't know. I mean, he also said that kind of stuff that seems very much counter to this idea that he was an authoritarian.
Yeah, exactly. That was the thing. When he was running in 2016, I had very big concerns about, stuff he would say about policing the press, which he ended up not doing. That was the funniest part of that. Is the big story was that he revoked Jim Acosta's press pass. It's like, Obama jailed like 35 journalists. You're worried about him revoking a press pass? Anyway, Screw the IRS says in Trump voice, LegalBytes, wonderful guest, really terrific. How many receptacles on the Federal Unemployment Tax Act? Should there be 2 receptacles or maybe 0 receptacles? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what would you think?
By receptacles, I'm not sure I understand that.
I don't know. That's what they asked. So
I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have lost their jobs because of the pandemic. I was one of them. So I'm not gonna knock people for getting those benefits. That's for sure.
Yeah. I have no idea what that should be. I'm not aware of receptacles on the.
As it relates to unemployment, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Lone Wolf Ranger says mutual combat to resolve suits should be allowed under the rules of civil procedure. Yes. Do you get to choose a champion as well? 200 Watt Studio says, Alita, it's true. Nick was on Twitch today saying his salsa debacle was worse than Kabul, Afghanistan. That's a fact. Wolfgang Deo says, I don't remember saying it, but it is true. It is worse than what's happening in Afghanistan. Wolfgang Deo says, LegalByte, was the summer of 2020 an insurrection? How about Portland's Antifa problem? Was it illegal for the vice president to have a bail fund for rioters? Oh, boy. That's
a lot of questions in there.
Yeah. You want to address them? Was the summer of 2020 an insurrection?
Summer of 2020.
So I guess the riots in response to Floyd would be that went all over the place.
An insurrection. I don't know. I feel like that would get into speculating on conspiracy theories potentially.
I don't think so. I don't personally. I see it as a bunch of violent activity. I think it has no place in society, but I don't think it was intended to overthrow and replace a sitting government. I think it was violence against government officials for sure and destruction of property, but I don't think they had any intention of doing that. Maybe in the Chaz.
And I do think that there were legitimately people that were out there to use their First Amendment rights. There definitely were. I mean, I was in DC at the time that this was going down, and you could kind of tell a difference between the daytime protests, and then after a certain hour, sort of some of the personnel might change, or certain people would go home and then other people would stay, and for one reason or another, I mean, we're talking about the psychology of groups at the same time that we're talking about this whole subject. So, like what can change a group of protesters into a group of rioters? Either they had a specific, actual intent to riot and to destroy things, or they got whipped up into a mob mentality. All of those things are possible when we're talking about groups of people, because people can be whipped up into a frenzy. I know that there also was a lot of emotion at the time among those protesters, and maybe you get them tired at the end of the day, and then they go further and further into their endeavors, or they just decide they don't care anymore and they want to destroy the world. I don't know.
Right. Or it's dark and it's harder to identify people, and it's easier to do things. No, but there are also
other people that there are always going to be those that will take advantage of a particular movement as well. So I definitely think that there were those people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have basically the same opinion. There are lots of people exercising their free speech, and then you have a subset of people who are bad actors, and
Yeah.
that's just how that, that's the nature of large groups. Is you're going to have a subset of people who are bad, even in a group of people who don't engage in violence. But I don't think it rises to insurrection. And I see
Yeah.
people in the chat saying, they wanted to burn down a building. Yeah, that's bad. Very, very bad that they wanted to destroy the courthouse. Destroying a courthouse isn't insurrection. It's destruction of government property.
Yeah.
But insurrection is the removal and replacement of a sitting government. And there's no way they're going to accomplish that. And I say the same thing about January 6th. Like, I don't see it as an insurrection, even if you take every story about these guys as all entirely bad actors, because I don't think they had any plan to replace the sitting government with some alternative governmental force. So I don't see it as an insurrection there. And that's getting into the legal definition of what an insurrection is.
Right. Right. And it's not to say that to say that it's probably not an insurrection is not necessarily to agree with what it is that they're doing either.
Right. No kidding.
So, to make that clear.
So the next one is, how about Portland's Antifa problem? I guess are they asking if that's an insurrection?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more interesting.
That is a bit more interesting, because that is a little bit more, they seem to have a bit more of an actual like political manifesto that they were trying to create a sub-government, right? That was, anti-government, but at the same time creating their own government. And it was literally just occupying territory, land owned by other people, and just taking it and saying, this is now mine, this belongs to me, which, I mean, under our laws is not anything that is okay.
Yeah, you can't annex part of the United. I mean, Family Guy had a great educational lesson about that, right? Peter established his house as the state of Pretoria.
No, that's right.
And that was fine. But then he annexed Joe's pool. You don't get to annex a portion of the United States. And so then the US built a barrier and embargoed it. And it was very funny. But with the Chaz, like the Chaz and the CHOP or whatever, the autonomous zones that they created, I think those stray closer to something like an insurrection, because they take an existing piece of the United States and they try to overthrow the government that's there and set up their own. So I think that's a lot closer. And then finally, was it illegal for the vice president to have a bail fund for rioters?
I don't know about illegal, questionable, definitely. Because, I mean, definitely questionable. That's for sure. But in terms of the legality of it, I don't know that I can say that it would be illegal, right? Because people can give their money to other people in support of them for all kinds of different reasons, right?
Right.
But
just because you're even a vice president or a vice presidential candidate, you do still have free speech rights, and you can still freely associate and assemble. I mean, there's some constraints on how maybe the funds are managed or something like that. But I don't think the vice president had a bail fund for rioters unless that's since the election. I thought that was prior to the election.
I don't know. I don't know the specifics around that, but I do understand that a lot of those funds went to Act Blue, which I think funded the Democratic campaigns in a lot of ways. So there's an interesting connection there between those fundraisers and ultimately what happened with that money in the election.
Yeah, that's always the question. Where does money go in an election? Because we have all sorts of laws around that. That's a different thing. Interestingly, but what if you knew it would result in violence? One, proving someone knows something will result in violence is one thing, but they use that same tack on Trump, and I disagreed with it then. It would be dishonest for me to agree with it against someone else. I don't think that a bail fund for rioters is an incitement to violence. And I don't think there's any legally cognizable way to make a bail fund for rioters an incitement to violence under the legal definition of incitement. Again, should she do that? No, probably not. Is it a questionable activity? Yes. Is it illegal is the question. And that's always very different. Base Crocodile says the Taliban flag looks like a video game zebra skin. Okay. Malik Foxton says, hi, Nick. Alita, kind of out of it tonight, so that's it.
Sorry, I'm going to mute it for just a second.
Okay.
Sorry, she sees people out off of the porch, and she's defending our home from people. Yes. How dare they walk past?
Good dog. Good doggo. Amateur Ant says, should he be hanged for treason with the generals that oversaw this debacle? I think yes, not just for Afghanistan, but for knowingly violating a Supreme Court order. That's a bit strong for me. That's a bit strong for me personally. Eldon Bainling says Warhammer sucks. Don't worry about it. StarCraft for the win. Eldon Bainling is also from a fake country, so it doesn't really matter what he says. Victor Phantasm says, Madam, what is the best way to eradicate furries?
Oh, I wouldn't know anything about that.
You know what furries are?
I do know from an interesting episode of CSI something or other.
Oh God!
Back in high school, that's what I learned. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Suck It says, to your last topic, did either of you see the leak call between Biden and Gotti? Gotti, that's his name. Biden tells him to play down the Taliban takeover months before. Yep, I talked about that on Twitch today. We talked about it just a minute ago. CJ says, was the Chaz chop an insurrection, I guess? Yeah, I think that's what we kind of came to the conclusion, that it's at least closer. We're lawyers. We're not going to tell you yes or no. Wolfgang Deo says, LegalBytes, what was the intention of freedom to peacefully assemble? To go to a public square or to demonstrate? Are we actually free to protest?
So the question was, what was the intention?
The intention of the freedom of assembly, of peaceful assembly. Is it to go to a public square or is it to demonstrate?
I mean, so they're all part of the First Amendment, right? So gathering, assembling, who you can associate with. That there's a lot of like overlap between all of those, right? Petitioning your government is protesting is one way to do that. Filing a lawsuit is another way to do that. Those are all First Amendment activities. But I don't know. What was the question again?
If the freedom of assembly was intended for just for people to gather in a public square or to actually demonstrate, I think it's pretty clearly to demonstrate, because people seem to forget that one of the big aspects of the Constitution and the rights behind it was the idea of the ability to petition your government for the redress of grievances.
Right.
And some ways you do that through a courtroom, and other ways you do that through just public declaration. And that's something you couldn't do to the king. And so I don't know if there's a particular suggestion in the question, but I think that it was definitely to demonstrate. I think political speech has been the most highly protected speech since the inception of the government, for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, the first, if you have if you're playing poker with certain constitutional rights, First Amendment is going to win. It's going to take the house, right? Pretty much any time, so long as it's a bona fide First Amendment argument. But it's generally one of the strongest protections that we have is under the First Amendment.
Yeah, and again, the right for people to just gather in a place probably doesn't need to be protected, because no one cares if people, like a government doesn't care if people get together. A government cares if people get together and start saying things against the government. That's when it matters to them. So I think that's the protection of the right. It's like that guy on Twitch. I watched a clip today of this guy arguing with AOC, and he's like, the right to hate is the most important right. And the point of that is it's really easy to allow everybody to do things that are popular. It's the unpopular thing that's hard. Yeah. Mr. Bentham says, will we abolish the Patriot Act? Patriot Act technically expired. So under Trump, I believe it expired. I want to say 2017, maybe, but, and they did not renew it. However, the legacy of the Patriot Act and Operation Choke Point and stuff like that, that's going to be around forever. Too much power, in my opinion. K. Shiloh Williams says, if SCOTUS decided money equals speech, they did, would that mean shutting off people's money is a First Amendment violation? That's a good question.
That is a good question.
They haven't gotten to the second part yet, but the first part was basically decided in Citizens United that money equals speech, at least in the political context. Base Crocodile says, she's a white girl, so I must ask why she has a dog. Why do you have a dog? Because you like dogs or some other reason?
I don't know. I don't understand what that has to do with me being white or a girl.
You don't want to.
No, so where I live, there are a lot of stray dogs and stray cats. And I went running enough times and was joined by a very friendly stray dog that I caught the bug and I needed to adopt one. So.
No, well, there you go. Yeah. CJ says, drawn and quartered still legal for high treason. No, I think that violates the 8th Amendment. Wolfgang Deo says, LegalBytes, how do we prevent fortifications of future elections? Is there any way to booby trap ballot boxes with napalm?
That's probably going to get into the, it's going to, get in the way of people's right to vote, because that's also a protection under the Constitution.
Yeah. Jason of the Great Awakening says, fear is the virus. Ooh, there you go. That's a take. Okay, a couple more. Space, we got 3 left, unless other people donate. Don't. Space Monkey 0899 says 85 billion seized by Taliban. Oh, that's been fact checked. How dare you? School children trapped, dogs abandoned, 13 killed, 10% abandoned, and more. Will another false flag like 9/11 happen to distract Americans from the Afghanistan disaster? Seems likely. We'll see. Who knows? Gulag Man says, in Trump voice, the Antifa teacher is absolutely horrible. Wants gulags. The gulags, very troubling. Joe Biden wants to throw blacks into gulags for slave labor. LegalBytes, was your family sent to a gulag?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Not my direct family, but I do, like I said, I do have a great grandfather that's still buried in Siberia. So, yeah.
Vacu Samago says they did renew the Patriot Act by legislative vote. I don't think they did. The FBI now needs to provide clear evidence to a judge before a secret warrant is granted for wiretapping and surveillance. I think that's 2 separate things you're talking about. I'm pretty sure the Patriot Act specifically expired. The FISA court still exists. That's a different animal altogether. And the FISA court actually predates the Patriot Act. Wolfgang Deo says, LegalBytes, can we bring back tar and feathers? Also, what is your favorite Trump poetry? And then Base Crocodile says, if we're terrorists, then when do we get our free stuff? There you go. Okay. That's the chats. LegalBytes, thank you for hanging out with me.
Of course.
And having a good discussion. I think everybody should go check out your channel. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there anything you wanted to say before we go out?
This has been wonderful. I really, really enjoyed this. Thanks for having me on, and your viewers are very funny in the chat.
Don't give them that much credit.
We got some very interesting questions, some very good questions, and then we got some interesting comments.
Yeah. You are way too polite for this world. Well, we'll definitely have you back on sometime.
I love it. I'd love to have you on my channel sometime.
Absolutely. Just let me know when. We'll set it up.
Sure.
Don't leave, because I like to say goodbye in private after these degenerates are all gone. Guys, okay. I'll be over on Twitch in a little bit. We'll do a movie night tonight. Should be fun. There's a whole bunch of new movies that just came out because it's the first. Well, it's technically the second now. So we'll see what's going on. Two more. Amateur Ant says, do we have a constitution when the demon craps and the Republic can't? Don't follow it, especially with the Patriot Act. We have a constitution. It's just what the value of it still is always in question. And Wolfgang Deo says, read this. There we go, guys. That's it. I'm not reading any more of your slanderous chats. We'll catch you guys later. Have a good night, guys. Peace.
Bye.